will be major spoilers for Lies of P in this episode. Please proceed with caution.
Okay, so I got a story. Is
this one going to be a pun again?
No.
Okay.
It's a Mike story.
It might be the one I heard last night.
Oh, did Stefan tell you already?
He called me.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear it, because this is good. I barely remember. I'll remember as you tell me.
Okay, so this story goes, I guess he was out like playing Pokemon Go, running errands, and he needed air in his tires. So he was by the dealer that he goes to like get his oil changed and stuff. And he's like, okay, let me go run up here and get some air in my tires while I'm, out running errands.
Uh-huh.
And he pulls up, and there's like 20 people in line, 20 cars all pulled up at the dealer thing. And he's like, I'm not waiting here. I'll come back later. I'll go finish my shit, and then I'll come get air. It's the last thing I do.
Mm-hmm.
So he leaves. He goes, catches more Pokemon, runs his errands, comes back to the dealer. And like 10 people in line. So he pulls up in line, and he's like waiting in line, and he's like, I gotta shit. He's like, I have to shit right now. I can't hold it. I have to shit. And for whatever reason, he's like, I can't, I don't have anybody with me, so they can't save my spot in line. I can't leave somebody in my car to save my spot in line.
Dude.
And so he's like, I had this gift bag in the front seat of my car.
Jesus.
He's like, it's this nice gift bag. It's padded with cloth. It's a really nice gift bag. And so he pushes his seat back and takes the gift bag and just fills it with shit and piss.
And piss? All right, that detail got left out when I heard the story, but
he shits and pisses in the bag. And so he shits and pisses in the bag. It has this cloth strap that is used to tie the bag up, and so he wipes his ass with it and then ties the bag closed with it, the cloth thing that he used to wipe his ass. And he's in his car, and he's like, oh yeah, it smells like shit in here.
Jesus.
And so he rolls down all the windows and opens the sunroof on his car, because he's he's gonna pull up to
the line at Discount Tire or whatever.
Yeah,
the fuck.
he's gonna pull up to the tire place.
Dude.
And ask the guy oh, can you get air in my tires?
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna come up and smell it. He's airing out his car, run the AC on full blast, all the windows open,
Jesus.
the line's moving forward. And he takes out his bag of shit, and he just throws it in the trash can at a coffee shop that's next to the dealer. As the line moves, he just throws it in their normal trash can. And people ask him oh, why didn't you just get out of line and go shit at the coffee place where they obviously
didn't
want
to get out of line.
He's well, I would have had to get out of line. And it's how normalized is shitting in places like that to you that you're dude, I can't get out of my line. I'm 9 out of 10 places in line. I don't want to lose my spot to get air in my tires. There's fucking free air at every gas station.
Jesus. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Stefan called me last night and was like, oh, I have a story to share. Another Mike story. And I was like, oh, I wonder what it's going to be about. Some sort of shit story.
It was funny. We were at dinner, and it was the first time that they had met the woman my dad was seeing. And they were like, oh, have you heard the shit story? And she's like, oh, which one? And they were all laughing oh no, this one's the best. This one's the best. And my dad's like, oh, I got another one.
There's another one. Wait, how recent is this?
It's a couple weeks ago.
Oh my God. So it's very recent.
Yeah.
Jesus. No wonder it's a new story. Yeah, that's sick.
Squatting in his car, shitting in a bag, and pissing in it.
Look, here's the thing.
Tosses it in a public trash can.
If it was an emergency, I might resort to something like that. Yeah, I'm shitting in the gift bag, dude. I can't even describe what that emergency would be. But hey, I wouldn't throw that option out. But it's such a last resort, man.
Need air in my tires. I was able to put it off because there were 20 people in line. I didn't want to wait in that.
I mean, I would shit in the bag before I shit my pants, right? Okay, hey, I have a bag. If I was literally Like, if it hit me, like, oh my God, I'm gonna shit myself right now. I'm stuck in line. I have to shit. I'm either gonna shit in my pants or not in my pants. Then, yeah, okay, I'm shitting in the gift bag or something. But, like, oh, I just don't want to lose my spot in line is not.
For free air. It's not even like, oh, I'm in line for something important, or like,
Yeah.
I've been in line for hours. Something that
Just
you
a
could...
slight inconvenience
Yeah.
is all.
Slight inconvenience. I guess I'm shitting in this bag.
That's so fucking bad, dude.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, I guess you could say he really filled up the water level of that bag.
Jesus. In his story, he kept going into detail about how nice the bag was.
I don't... What? I mean, the fact that it wasn't leaking piss and shit everywhere is like, hey, I mean, it must have been a somewhat decent bag. If it was like a little paper piece of shit, then I would imagine you'd be shitting in it.
It was a really nice bag. It's like, I was like, oh yeah, keyword there was.
Yeah, until you fucking loaded it up, dude. My God. Yeah,
Yeah, disgusting.
I bet his car still smells like shit.
I was just in it. It doesn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was probably pretty tidy with it. I mean, he's experienced. So.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah, he knows how to handle these situations.
Yeah. You do anything spooky for Friday the 13th?
Oh, yeah, we watched this movie called No One Can Save You. It's a Hulu original about an alien invasion.
That's already not a good start.
Right,
Hulu
right,
original.
yep. Not what I was expecting at all. I knew it was like an alien movie. I knew that it was a spooky movie. But what I didn't expect was for it to not be scary at all, and to be a little bit goofy, and like take itself a little too seriously. So I'm gonna spoil this whole movie right now.
Spoilers.
Spoilers.
Skip to this.
Now you can see
skip
me.
to this
No One Can Save
timestamp
You.
if you want to avoid spoilers.
Bing, 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 bing.
Right up there. There's the.
Yeah, there won't be. But so we turn on this movie, and it opens with basically like, oh, this like, you know, as credits roll, like this woman kind of doing stuff around her house, whatever. And you're kind of seeing that like she's lost a friend. You don't know if it's like she's dead or whatever, but like, oh, this friendship doesn't exist anymore. And then like, oh, they show her at like a funeral, whatever. Like, so you're starting to get a picture, but no words are being spoken. And that's one thing about the movie, is that there is specifically no dialogue throughout the movie until a pivotal scene. And then even past that, there's no dialogue.
And it really works.
No. It's not good. But it was super noticeable. Like, nope, nobody's talking. Like everyone, like when there are scenes with people, they like look at each other with like weird looks, and then like turn, and like, it's like, what the fuck? Anyway, so within 10 minutes, aliens are invading this girl's home. I was really expecting more of like a Signs like build up, or I mean that's extreme, where it's like, dude, like nothing happens until the very end.
Like you would have thought, like there would have been a sign earlier and then a sign later. Like there would have been
signs.
Signs.
Like little things, and instead it's just like, nope, dude, aliens are at her house. It's these very classic little gray men with beady black eyes, and they're like chasing her around the house, but they're also like not killing her. Like, so I'm watching the movie like, are these guys like evil? Like, they're not like killing, like they have opportunities to kill her. They're like pinning her against the wall with like telekinesis and like doing stuff. And then she accidentally kills one of them, basically. Like it like spins her around while it's holding her with telekinesis, but she has like a thing in her hand, stabs it in the head. And you're like, oh shit, she killed one. And then it's like, oh, like the movie just keeps going. It's like the next day, she's like, oh my God, there's a dead alien in my house. Again, no words being spoken, just like, oh, there's a dead alien in this girl's house, and she's freaked out. She like tries to go to the police, but like she runs into like the dad of her dead best friend, who you find out later in the story she killed her with a rock when they were 12, and so there's just like bad blood there or something. But like, so when she goes to the police, they like spit in her face, literally, and then she doesn't even tell them what's going on. She just leaves. Then on the bus ride back, to her house, there's fucking like a
Is there
possessed.
anything interesting?
No, there's a sort of. There's a possessed man who is like an alien, but he's a human. Like, but you can tell he's clearly possessed by the aliens, and you're like, what the fuck? And he's like chasing her and stuff. Again, at no point does she actually seem in full danger. She never gets hurt once. And this all comes to fruition at the end when you basically realize that, hey, after she's killed a couple more aliens, they do finally like get her, and they put this thing in her throat, and she like relives her trauma, tells her best friend at 12 years old that she's sorry, and like that's the line of dialogue. It's like in her head she finally says like, I'm so sorry, Maud. That's her name.
It's the point is no one can save you
Except for
you.
yourself,
Yeah.
yes. Except that's not the case. It's at the end of the movie, she's like walking around all happy, and she's like waving to other people, and you see that the other people are all like, oh, everyone on the planet is infected by these aliens, but they're all living in bliss now. And like you see, like there's alien spaceships all over the sky, and like the world's been taken over, but everyone's happy. Because, like, oh, the aliens actually do save you. It's fucking bad, dude.
It's a weird ending. I kind
baffled.
of like it.
I mean, the ending was probably the best part. But it was just like, after an hour and 20 minutes of just like, this movie is so below average that, like, when the end hits, you're like, okay, nice. And
Would
then-
you recommend it as like a Friday the 13th spooky
No,
movie?
dude, I really regret it. There was another movie we wanted to watch that's supposed to be like a solid spiritual successor to the original Exorcist.
The new Exorcist?
No, it's not that. It's called like Evil People. I don't know, Possession. And I just couldn't find it. And I was like, oh, there's that one on Hulu. Yeah, like this alien one. I heard about that. And I basically didn't hear it was good. I had just heard about it. Like, there's this new movie on Hulu. I'm not going to spoil anything. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I'll check that out. So that's why we turned that on. And I really regret not, like, looking into reviews. But it was an okay time. 2 out of 5. Not great. What about you? Did you do anything spooky aside from listen to that shit story?
Yeah, shit story was spooky indeed. Yeah, I played Phasmophobia. We usually play it on Fridays when we don't have other stuff going on. So that was our typical Friday evening, but also Friday the 13th.
Anything particularly spooky happen? Any updates to the game that made it more fun?
There was a big update a little while ago, like a month or two ago, that changed a lot of stuff in the game.
Oh, okay.
My brother got spooked pretty hard last night. It was funny. He usually doesn't get got.
That's sick.
But I told this joke last night that I was crying. I had my brother wheezing. Ross only got half of the joke because the setup was so fucking good for it.
Okay.
I probably can't tell the joke. Like, I'll move the mic away and I'll tell you the fucking joke because it's a hot item right now in the world news space.
Oh, it has to do with Israel.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, so it started with like, we had been playing for like an hour maybe, so we were like a couple maps in, playing the game.
Uh-huh.
We're in the middle of one level, and somebody says something, like, my brother says something about like, it was like, oh yeah, that thing's like really square. Like, this isn't what he said, but something like that. And I go, oh yeah, it's that thing's, if that thing was any more square, it would be a box or something like I said something really innocuously stupid that was just like, what? So I said that on like one level, and then I didn't like make that other, like any other jokes like that for like the entire
Playing
rest
the
of
long con.
Yeah. Well, and the payoff was like, the way that it all
Did
came
you know,
together,
like, oh, I'm setting this up?
No.
Oh.
As soon as it like came together, I was like, oh, this is going to be so fucking funny. So I'm like, okay, I didn't make any more jokes like that because it was just stupid. And then, I was doing other stuff while I play. Because that game's really funny. Like, it leads itself to so many comedic moments just because of the way the game is framed, where it's like, there's really good proximity chat. I mean, it's not like really good, but there's proximity chat.
Proximity chat.
So, people get quieter as they move away from you. You can't hear people if they're like on like separated by certain environments. Like there's a really big dampening effect even if you're close by, but if you're outside versus inside, it's tough. You can't really hear people. And so we go to the next level. We're on like the smaller camp level.
Mm-hmm.
And like
I know that one.
We just start, and my brother so as part of the big update, they added like tiers to all the items. So all the items have 3 tiers now.
Even like flashlight?
Yeah. The one that existed in the game, flashlights already had tiers. There were already 2 flashlights.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The ones that existed in the game are basically the middle tiers for everything, and they added lower end. So you start with the lower end gear. You have to unlock it, but you start with the lower end, and then as you play, you unlock the middle tier, and then there's like the high end gear.
Got it.
And so we had just unlocked like the middle tier parabolic microphone, and the parabolic microphone is like you turn it on and you point it, and it reduces all the noise that you hear, and you can point it and like whatever you're pointing at, in like a cone of whatever, like it'll be like really amplified, and so it can help you hear like, oh, did the ghost open a door somewhere that like I can't normally hear, but like I'll be able to hear it really amplified and get the general direction of where to go.
Right.
So my brother is messing with that because he just unlocked it, and so he's messing with like the new version, which is the old version, but they've tweaked it a little bit. And he's like, oh man, like I don't know how I feel about this thing. Like it's really sensitive. And I go, oh yeah, if it was any more sensitive. And then he like cuts me off. He's like, oh, like the ghost just threw something. And like, I'm like, okay, I didn't actually have anything yet. So like, I'm kind of glad that he cut me off, but I want to act pissed that he cut me off. Cause like, hey, I was like gonna do something. And,
Yeah.
You cut me off. So I'm like, hey, I was like trying to do a bit and like you cut me off. So I like walk away and I'm ranting like, oh, I was trying to do a bit, and you're just like, oh, it goes through something. And like, I'm walking away so that I get quieter and quieter. And then like, as soon as I'm out of hearing vision, I turn around and I'm like, I walk back up to him and I go, I was going to say, if the ghost was any more sensitive, and I just go to him and I just go, it would be an Israeli.
Dude, that definitely came through. It was just quieter on the fucking street.
Holy shit. My brother starts like wheezing laughing, and I start cracking up because it's like he's expecting me to say something innocuously stupid, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna go with like horribly really offensive and just be like, oh yeah, this is gonna be so good. And Ross only heard that part, and he was just like, what the fuck, like why would you say that? My brother's cracking up because he thought I was gonna, like, that's the part of the reason he cut me off. He's like, oh, he's just gonna say, oh, if it's any more sensitive, he's gonna say something stupid. And I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna say something fucked up. It's gonna be so funny. Yeah, it caught my brother way off guard. He was just like, what the fuck?
Well, it might be sensitive, but or insensitive. But I think that that's part of the fun. If you can't make a little fun out of war, then what's the point? It's just war. It's horrible. You got to be able to be like, oh, look at me, I'm getting bombed, or something, like something really like that.
Whatever.
I'm not. Mine wasn't as funny. All right, hang on. I'm gonna do this thing real quick. This is gonna be.
Why'd you do that?
I moved a thing. It was annoying me.
Okay.
Could you hear like the echo?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, what do you think of feet stream? What do you think of the feet stream? I didn't wear socks today. I did it on purpose too. Look, I got my toenails painted. You look more pissed off than a fucking Hamas soldier, dude.
Jesus.
That's the pod.
Speaking of painted.
Oh, pee. Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's. That was an okay transition. Let's get into that. Yeah, because
I don't want to. I'm tired of hearing about Liza P. I think that you overrate the shit out of this game.
Well, it's a 4 out of 5. It's not a 5 out of 5, but it is really good. And what I specifically wanted to talk about is that the game is fundamentally different from like every Soulslike that I've played. And I talked about this a little bit last time but I was earlier in the game. I was probably halfway through when we last talked about it, and now I've beaten it.
Did you beat it last night?
Yeah. And I got the best ending, like the one that's like the likely canonical one kind of thing. There's
the true ending.
Yeah. First try. Shout out. Gamer God, whatever.
Shout out Game Facts. Thanks for helping him pick all the right choices.
I didn't do that.
And the guide really helped him out.
No guide. Just
I'm
just good.
Thank you, Game Facts.
And basically what what hit me like at the end of the game, or really toward the end, was how linear the game is. The game is extremely linear, and we talked about this. You asked like, "Oh, how's the level design?"
Because it seems fucking linear.
It's very linear, and there are levels with a decent amount of non-linearity to them, but it's fake. It's just, hey, I can go over here and grab an item that might loop around in a special way instead of just being a little tree branch. It might kind of whoop. And like, oh, that's cool. And then you can come up on enemies from behind. And, oh, there's a little optional mini boss guy over there who drops a special item. And, but for all intents and purposes, each area is a level. Each area is like you go from point A to point B. And it's the start,
so
and then it's the boss.
Is there any point where you have a choice of levels to do?
Zero.
You always it's always this level, then this level.
That's what I was surprised with by the end, was the complete linearity of the game. Again, like, yeah, there's some slight non-linearity, but for all intents and purposes, it would be like playing Dark Souls 2 and you can only go in this specific
Okay, hear me out.
Uh-huh.
Can a Soulslike be linear?
Yeah, so that's what I'm getting at, is that I think the answer is yes. I think that after playing this, it's made me like question, like, oh, like, could Dark Souls 3 be a better game if it was just completely linear? Because what I think it offers as a trade-off is decently strong. It really creates a sense of building tension, of building challenge, and it ensures that you essentially see everything. Like, that's one of the things that people say about Souls games is like, oh, there's like this really cool stuff that you can like miss. That's like entire bosses and zones that are like the Painted World of Ariamis or the DLC, like all this stuff in all the Souls-like games. That's like really major, important lore building content. And in Lies of P, it's much softer. Like, yeah, there's some NPCs you can talk to that like you could technically miss, but they're very side. They do add to the main story, and there are little side plot things, but it's very linear, and I think it works in this game's benefit. Where like, hey, dude, I experienced that whole game on my first playthrough. There was like one item that I know that I missed because I needed an item that I opted out of, essentially, and was like, fuck.
I'm convinced. You've convinced me it's not a Souls-like.
Yeah, so I think that it is. I think that non-linearity is not essential to crafting a Souls-like.
I disagree.
Just like the fact that in Sekiro, making your own character is not essential to being a Souls-like. And like,
but
there's a lot of changes.
Every Souls game ever made has had elements of non-linearity.
Yep. And until this one, and so I
this
agree.
Isn't a Souls game.
No, I agree with you.
The Souls-like genre is derivative of the Souls games made by FromSoft.
But every single other aspect is so in line with a Souls game, and not even a Souls-like, with a Souls game.
But it's not, right? Because if you're non-linear...
No. I said every other aspect.
Right.
Every other aspect.
I know. I'm explaining how the non-linearity bleeds into other aspects of the game and destroys the essence of what a Souls-like is.
So that's what I'm saying, is that what's really interesting, having played it, is that it doesn't. It absolutely does not, and I was really surprised by that. So what it does have in exchange for non-linearity is choice. So your character can make choices that alter the narrative, right? Which like no Souls games really do. It's like you might, oh, I killed Eileen the Crow or I didn't, but there's zero impact on the game itself. Versus Lies of P, it's like, oh no, the choices that you make either make you more or less human, and then therefore impact bosses and the final ending. And like the endings that you can get are dependent on all those things. So there is like replayability there, and it is very different from a Souls game in the way that, and Souls likes in the way that it presents its narrative and its world structure. But I was really surprised by the fact that it was so linear didn't take away from that sense of place and that sense of I don't know, game feel, I guess, that is, I think, so essential in Souls-likes. And by game feel, I don't mean like the literal combat. I mean more like the way in which you traverse the game.
Yeah,
right?
I think if I played Lies of P, I would probably hate it.
The fact that it's linear, I think, is interesting. Well, it's funny, right? Because it's like, oh, dude, fucking Jedi Fallen Order is extreme. It's also extremely linear, but there are paths of divergence where you can go do stuff in slightly different orders, right? And that game is way less of a Souls-like in almost every other way. And it offers nothing to the core gameplay because it's so poorly done in Jedi Fallen Order. Again, like, hey, if it was, hey, there's Travioli.
Is Jedi less of a Souls-like?
In my opinion, yes. I think that it is. Oh, your shit's blasting,
Got
bro.
audio on.
You want the audio on, you just want it in your ear.
It fucks up sometimes.
Oh, but yeah, I think that like having played both, and why can't I hold on. Why can't I hear Travis?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Let's get back to Lies of
I'm
P.
convinced Lies of P is not a Souls-like.
Okay, yeah.
I'm taking the position that
It requires nonlinearity, some
if
level.
you're going to be a Souls game, at the bare minimum, you have to have like all the core elements that are common between all of the Souls games.
Sure.
You have to have the
I think that
nonlinearity.
position makes sense.
Yeah,
I
you don't have
disagree
to.
with it, but I
you don't have to have
understand
stats and skill points.
Yeah.
You don't have to be able to create your character. But there are elements to the way that combat works, to the way that world exploration works, to the way that exposition is delivered, that are common throughout all of the games. And if you don't have all of those features, you're not a Souls-like. You're something else.
But specifically the games that you're talking about have to be FromSoft Souls games, right? Like,
yeah, those Souls,
the core
those
Souls
common
games.
elements between all the Souls-esque games made from FromSoft, right? Bloodborne,
Right.
all the Dark Souls and Demon Souls,
Yeah.
and Sekiro. Everything that's in common between all
Though
of those
Sekiro
games.
isn't Souls-like.
Yeah, it is. Because
combining
all those defines what a Souls-like is.
Yeah.
That's what defines it.
So I think what's interesting is that, if you look at something like roguelike, or really any genre that's based on, an original game, right? Even like Doom clones and stuff like that. I think that there is a period in which, that argument is the definition, but as time goes on, it becomes less and less valuable because it's like, okay,
Do you think so? I think roguelikes actually are the opposite of your argument, where there was a point where it was like getting confusing, and so that's when they diverged to roguelikes and roguelites.
Yeah, which is one of the
said,
worst
okay,
in gaming, and that most people don't take seriously.
Break it up. No, they do, because
if you look up what a roguelike is and you look at Wikipedia lists,
but that definitively splits the progression elements of the game and sets an expectation for, if it's a roguelike, it's true permadeath and all the progression is meta progression. If it's a roguelite, there are elements of consistent progression throughout the game.
There are people that feel really strongly about the fact that roguelikes need to be text-based, and there are people that are very strongly feel that they need to have
not text-based.
Text-based adventures. That's what Rogue was.
No, Rogue was an ASCII game.
Yeah. Text. Yeah. I mean, it's
When you
made
say
in ASCII.
text-based, to me that means
Right. Yeah. Technically, there are sprites in the form of ASCII characters.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. You're right. It's not like Adventure. Right. Adventure was a text-based game. The original Adventure.
that sounds right.
Anyway,
Whatever the one in Call of Duty.
So I think that if there's an argument that Lies of P is a Souls light, I think sure that's fine if we want to start creating those genres. But to me, I think that we're just at that point where like, games are diverging enough from that core formula while still adhering to so much of it. And I that's the same argument I would make for Sekiro, where it's like, yeah, it has major differences from all of the other Souls games to the point where a large portion of people feel that like Sekiro is not even a Souls-like. The fact, whereas you and I are like, well, no, that's a Souls game. It just is different. I think that it's a very similar argument, and the only argument that Sekiro is and Lies of P isn't is that one is made by the company that made the original, despite the fact that that's a very different game from any of their other Souls games.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that Sekiro is fundamentally more similar to Dark Souls than Lies of P is to Dark Souls.
I think they're basically the same in terms of like how similar they are. On Lies of P's end, I think it's more similar in general game feel, exploration, movement, level design, and RPG mechanics. Right, like there's and I could probably go more than that, but those are the really obvious ones. And the major point of differentiation is that nonlinearity. I think that it's fine to say that hey, that nonlinearity is so essential to being a Souls-like that if you're missing it, that get fucked. Like you're not a Souls-like. But what I thought was interesting while I was playing it was just that like I have problems with Dark Souls 3. I have problems with Dark Souls 2, right? Even Bloodborne. Bloodborne in particular is very, very, very linear. It's really close to the way in which Lies of P is linear.
But you can
but
do different levels at different times.
There are a couple of points. So it's like, hey, Bloodborne is lighter than something like Dark Souls 1 or Dark Souls 2, where Dark Souls 2, it's like, dude, throughout most of the game, like you can go in like 4 directions at any point. Dark Souls 2 is actually probably one of the least linear of all the Souls games, funnily enough, because it's the worst one and it's also good, so don't worry about it. If you're watching and you love Dark Souls 2, we also like that game. So I just thought it was interesting because so much of the experience, especially through halfway through the game, was like, hey, maybe the game's gonna open up. Even Dark Souls 1 is more linear in the first half and then less linear in the second, though there's plenty of non-linearity in the first half.
Demon Souls is the most non-linear one.
Yes.
That's the most non-linear.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. It's at least tied with Dark Souls 2. The difference being that Dark Souls 2 basically always has 4 paths that you can take and has multiple points in which there are different 4 paths that you can take at any one time.
There's not 4 paths you can take at any one time, though, in Dark
Pretty
Souls
much.
2.
Yeah, pretty much.
Start of the game at Majula, what are the 4 ways? I guess depending on your starting item.
Exactly.
If you have
there are always 4. You can either go to the Last Giant.
You can't do the
Gulch.
You can't do the Gulch.
Yes, you can.
Level 1, can you?
You can. You can go straight there.
You can fall down there.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All you got to do is
don't you have to pay to get the ladder dropped?
No, you can use the ring that you can get right away from the cat.
But you have to buy that with souls.
Yeah.
In order to get those souls, you have to go a different way.
You could farm in the beginning before you even get to that point. You can also start with the
That's
starting
not
class.
I won't entertain that as a real option.
Okay, so it's maybe one less, but the reality is you can definitely just go that way right at the
It
beginning.
very quickly becomes as partway through one of the ways it becomes realistic that you could go.
You could just go that way, because you can either do.
But that's a lot different than Demon Souls, where
No,
it's
Demon Souls is
literally
here's
like,
5.
Yeah,
Well,
pick one of them.
Demon Souls is do the first level first and then pick 5. And then, but within those 5, it's extremely linear, right? And similarly in Dark Souls 2, it's like, oh yeah, like within each zone, like each zone is just like a linear path. But there are a couple where there's like a little bit of like a circular, like kind of different paths that can get you there. Like you can get to the Lost Sinner, by either going through Hide Star of Flame or by going through the and that takes you to No Man's Wharf, to the Lost Bastille or whatever. And then what's the other way you get there? It's the default way, because that's like that's the back path in my opinion.
What is
going through the No Man's Wharf to get to the Lost Bastille?
the other way? Is through
Oh, you kill the pursuer and then you take the crow. The crow picks you up and he drops you off at Sinner's Rise or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that game I think has like throughout the game, like various paths will be open like all the time. You can basically be like, I mean, especially when you start taking into account the DLC and stuff too, where it's like, hey, as you start finding keys for like the different DLCs,
now you have a lot
now,
of places.
like
you
that
can go.
that game really opens up. So that's why I'm like, oh, it might be tied, because Demon Souls is more upfront and like very clear. Oh, okay, go to these levels.
That's the big part about Demon Souls is it's 5 level 2s, and until you beat a whole world, you always basically have 5 options.
Yeah, you have 5
on where
paths to go, and
next.
you can kind of bounce between the worlds, just like
And you-
yeah.
Almost should be like
Yeah, because it's yeah. I mean, I play that game differently. I go like I do a world, and then I do a world, and I do a world. But well, I have done it that way. So 'cause I played that game multiple times. But yeah, anyway, so I think that with Lies of P, I think that yeah, there is a strong argument that hey, that nonlinearity is vital. What I found interesting playing it was that it didn't feel vital while I was playing it. So I think upon retrospect, it's easy to be like, maybe that's not a Souls game. But while I was playing, even once I realized like this is linear, I was like, would Bloodborne be better if it was just a linear game with none of that shit? Would Dark Souls 3? Because some of the problems with those games has to do with like the scaling that they have to account for based on the fact that you can go all these directions at one time.
What do you
Dark
mean?
Souls 1 has the biggest problem there, actually, where it's so I'll focus on Dark Souls 1 first, but I think it applies to a lot of the games, especially Dark Souls 2. All of the areas are intended like, hey, you can go all the way through, up through Anor Londo, let's say, Dark Souls 1. And then after Anor Londo, you have the 4 paths that you can choose from, right? The first one you do is going to be the hardest, and then they're all going to get easier because you're leveling up and they're all scaled equally as if you were taking them on as the first one. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that that's arguably an essential aspect of Soulsborne game level design, right? Is that balance? But Lies of P was just like, fuck it. We're not going to do that. It's going to be a linear progression. There are moments of backtracking, so there is some nonlinearity in that, like, there are some side quests, but you're never going like. And technically, there is one optional area I found, so whatever. But it's extremely optional. It didn't have a boss; it had a mini boss at the end of it, and like no health bar kind of thing, But it had an important item at the end, and so it might. But that was the only thing, and maybe I missed shit, but I don't think so. But it's all very, very linear, and it allows the game to flow in terms of its difficulty, I think, really, really well. At no point was I like... The only times I ever felt overpowered were toward the end of a zone. Like, hey, I've cleared this whole zone, like, I've really gotten it down, so now when I'm going through it, it's easy. and then I would come up against the boss of that zone and be like immediately like, oh fuck, yeah, that's hard again. And then the next zone would come and the next zone is hard, and they know that because the game is so linear, like it felt like they were taking advantage of that. And I especially felt that at the end of the game. The end of the game has the most last level of a last level in any Souls game I've ever played. It's like this. It would be like if the last level in Demon Souls was like, yeah, dude, scale Boletaria from the outskirts all the way to Alant. Like, that's what the last level of Lies of P felt like. And it was like, dude, it's this fortress castle place. You start on the beach. You have to work your way into the castle.
And you like that?
I thought it was
really
awesome.
liked,
it was super fun. And it really felt like something that Souls games don't tap into.
They
dude,
deliberately don't do
they
that.
They don't, yeah.
It's very intentional. And
yeah.
I mean, you see it in, most obviously in like Dark Souls 1, where you get to the last level and it's the kiln. And it's like, yeah, here's last level.
But it's like,
small
dude, there's
area.
4 guys. Yeah.
It's not supposed to be this triumphant, look at all these challenges that you're overcoming.
Right,
it's very much there to build the atmosphere.
Yes. It's much more, hey, here's your final walk up to the boss, that is the final challenge. Yeah, totally agree. I just thought it was really
why
fun.
I disagree with you that
it was just really fun.
Lies of P is a Souls-like is because
Souls-like, I think, is totally fine to call it.
Souls games aren't about what I would consider to be the superficial elements of the RPG side of things, the stats.
Right,
it's not about the combat.
To me, it's almost entirely setting an atmosphere.
And I think that the nonlinearity is
a big
almost the single most important element of it.
And I would have said the same thing.
And that's why their magnum opus of the Souls formula is fucking Elden Ring. Yes. And it's like, yeah, let's take that nonlinearity and
to the extreme,
ratchet it up as much, because this is what we think our games are. Yep. It's about
that. Yeah.
It's an RPG, not about like role playing, or not about
it's about choice.
Stats and character building. Yeah, it's about being in a world and making engaging decisions that are going to impact the sequence of events, that are going to impact
so much of it really boils down to setting, where it's
your understanding
it's a sense of place.
The narrative, which is essentially in a Souls game the setting.
What I thought was interesting is in Lies of P, I think that they made a really, really convincing and unique and Souls feeling setting, despite having it more linear. I do wonder, hey, what would it have been like? Because so there's like a character you can talk to that tells you like, oh, here's like 4 areas. And so when I first talked to him, I thought, oh, am I going to have a choice to go to this area and then, or this one and this one? And it turns out, no, it's literally you go this one, this one, this one, this one. And then after you get to the halfway point, he talks about 4 new areas. And then I thought, oh, this is where it's going to open up. Nope, it's linear. And I was like, oh, okay. Like by the end of the game, it just caught me off guard that it was as strong of a feeling Souls-like as, or light or whatever, as it was, despite that linearity. Because I have a poster on my wall of the Dark Souls 1 world design and just like the crazy interconnectivity of it, and I think that's one of gaming's biggest achievements. It's like what makes Dark Souls win that like ultimate game of all time award by Joystick or whatever, is that like, dude, it's not the moment to moment combat. It's really not the boss fights. It's the world design. And the fact that Lies of P doesn't have that aspect, I think is surprising. It was surprising to me playing it. But I do think it's like, dude, Bloodborne is a very, very linear game, except for the DLC. You could argue the path that you can take to Old Yarnum, because you can technically come in the back way if you go find Dark Beast Parl and fight him, and then come in through the back.
You also can do like amygdala and
yep, there's those like optional areas. Like I'm pretty sure amygdala might not be optional. I don't think
amygdala
but the Nightmare Frontier, but there are aspects of the Nightmare Frontier that are optional.
Yeah, but you choose between like when you do amygdala, do you do that before or after the
And yeah, I just think that, hey, if you stripped that out of Bloodborne and made you go through in a very specific order, I think it would relatively be the same same feeling. And I wouldn't have thought that. I really wouldn't have until after playing Lies of P and realizing like, man, I'm taken aback by the fact that the linearity didn't bother me at all, because I complained about it with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and that game's less linear.
Yeah, Bloodborne specifically, it might help. You
Right.
said Dark Souls 2 is the worst Souls game. I strongly disagree with you. I think it's Bloodborne.
Yeah, it's crazy, but go ahead.
And it's because of the emphasis on combat and the de-emphasis on all of the other stuff that makes the Souls games really interesting.
Right. Yeah,
And
Bloodborne
it
is much
puts it
more
in this weird
combat
tweener
focused.
state. And it's like, hey, if you were to commit to either of those in more direction,
Right,
like
more linearity
Sekiro commits to more combat. Sekiro feels way fucking better than Bloodborne.
Yes.
It has,
Sekiro is also more linear, but it has again,
it has one part where there's like big non-linearity, but
Yes.
it's also fairly linear.
Yes.
But they commit more to that combat element, and it works way better in Sekiro. And then you have something like Dark Souls that's the combat is like
It's fine.
functional, but it's really there as a vessel to
As a
allow
vessel,
you to
yeah.
explore the world. Bloodborne's in this weird middle state that to me is jarring and not fun
Yes,
to play.
I get that. I do. I mean, it took me
That's so I was going to
3
say
attempts to
if-
really finally click with Bloodborne and finally like, okay, I can beat the game now.
If I played Lies of P, I was going to say this at the start. I think I would like it more than Bloodborne
right,
because
I think you would too.
it solves that problem by
It's
saying
more combat focused.
Yeah,
and
to me, it's almost not trying to be a Souls game.
yeah,
It's
it
trying
really
to
is.
take Souls combat and make tell your story in a way that the Souls games
Yes.
do and
It's
whatnot.
it's the most like triple. It's funny because it's not triple A. It's the most. It's the best example of what I would imagine another company AAA Souls-like being, where like, I mean, and the reality is Jedi Fallen Order is actually that, where it's like, dude, you went
game's
too far.
janky as fuck,
Yeah,
though.
you went too far into the narrative direction, and you fucking like copied the wrong aspects.
Yeah, you
and,
didn't go AAA with your game. You went like Marvel with your game. That's what Jedi Fallen Order
Yes,
is.
like
That's
quadruple A or whatever you want to like. Oh, bro, you went into stupid Star Wars territory.
yeah. You went to pandering AAA.
Yes.
There's a difference between like you're a AAA game, you're Call of Duty
Right.
versus you're a AAA game. I just threw a bunch of money and tried to appeal to mass market.
Right. Liza P is a much more we talked about this a little bit last time, but the fact that it's more accessible, approachable is probably the better word. But I
Sure.
think that linearity goes to it, because it really at no point does Liza P feel overwhelming, except for the boss fights, which some of them, even the last boss in Liza P, I was like, holy shit, this is one of the hardest Souls bosses I've ever fought. Like, and I had heard people saying online that, oh, the game has points where it's too hard, and I didn't really get it except for a handful of fights where I'm like, it made me wonder, like, am I just playing the game wrong? I think the answer was yes, because when I did finally beat the bosses, it was because like I changed my style up, and I would either focus more on perfect blocking or more on dodging, or vice versa, depending on the boss. So, use a fire weapon instead of electric. Like there are ways. So the game actually isn't as difficult as it seems, but those are points in which like, oh, the game is not approachable in the boss fights. Like it is very like fuck you, trial by fire. Versus the world design, if you compare it to something like Dark Souls is like, you went the wrong way, like, you don't know you went the wrong way, and you're fighting skeletons in the catacombs, and it's fucked up. Liza P doesn't even provide that as even the slightest option. At no point are you going to be like, am I going the right way? Though I did think that in little zones, like, oh, but that's just my thoughts of like, oh, which way is the way for me to find the items, and which way is the way for me to
It's
fight the boss.
interesting that you mentioned that the bosses are like a trial by fire, because I noticed this while watching you play, is that the runbacks in Liza P seem like they suck.
I completely disagree. That's so funny. The only time the runbacks suck is before you get to the boss. Once you get to the boss, the runbacks for every single boss are either completely devoid of enemies or like, yeah, dude, like there's even ones where the fucking checkpoint is right at the boss door and you're just like, oh, let me just
It's just
fight the
so
boss.
it's so that's not true, because I watched you do runbacks to bosses where you killed enemies along the way.
Yeah, I said almost completely devoid of enemies. There's specifically a couple where it's like, oh, there's some guys you can parry,
Yeah.
you can parry here and kill them real quick, or
I mean, you
just
can just run
completely run
past them,
past them.
yeah.
Yeah, there are way
But the
worse
fact
runbacks
that
in
there
every
is-
other Souls game.
No, there's not.
Yes. Yep.
Right? Because I thought
Hard to
starting
disagree.
in Sekiro is when they got rid of runbacks, and they are eliminated. They're not in Elden Ring, right?
There's some runbacks in Sekiro, but they got way better, and Elden Ring basically got rid of them by providing
The checkpoint thing.
the checkpoint things. Yes, which is a way better solution.
And so it's interesting
Yes.
to me that it's like Liza P has runbacks, while the Souls games have acknowledged
That
these
they
aren't
those
a
do
part
kind
of
of
the
suck.
game. Yeah.
I think that the runbacks are extremely bare. Like the ones that I can think of that are slightly more annoying are the ones that are just longer. Because at no point did it feel like, holy shit, I can't, like, I'm at risk of dying on my way back to the boss, and I might lose my soul. You know, like that's a lot of stress kind of came from runbacks in Souls games, or does come from the runbacks in Souls games, where it's like, dude, it's a long path. Like, dude, think about Nito. Nito has one of the
Well,
worst.
the worst one is Duke's Dear Freya.
Oh yeah, dude. The Souls games are full of horrible runbacks, and I think that Liza P is very, very soft with
Beta
it.
Chaoses is also terrible.
Yeah, there's a bunch of bad ones in the Soul. You're right though that in Sekiro they improved it, because there are less runbacks, but there are still some. But you're also just so much faster and agile in Sekiro that, like, dude, it's way easier to just like run past dudes when there are. And then in fucking Elden Ring, the fact that they give you the little Marika statues, is awesome. And I think that would benefit Liza P. You know, just like, oh, do you want to respawn?
It's an interesting
Here or
decision to not copy that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I noticed in the credits some 2017 copyrights in Liza P. So I think that game has been in development for a while. And
that's still a respawn system. Doesn't seem like it would take.
No. But it's just like, oh, maybe who knows where they were at in the process when they realized, oh, should we do that thing in Elden Ring, and just kind of were like, fuck it, you know, like. But I thought that was surprising, and maybe those 2017 copyrights aren't indicative of when the development started. You know, like, could just be that, like,
engine
could be a typo
licensing.
for all we fucking know.
Could be
you know?
engine licensing.
Yeah, engine licensing. Yeah,
Doesn't mean
which is
anything.
it was a Google copyright, you know, for specifically this, you know, audio engine they were using, and I was like, but I just thought it was interesting. Like, oh, like that exists today. It exists when the game released. You're copywriting it in 2017. You're using the 2017 copyright. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting, but yeah, I would imagine that if they did consider changing the checkpoint system, that it was just like, yeah, I mean, we'll just not do that. Yeah, that's my biggest. Well, I have one other huge thought about Liza P, which I also brought up last time, but that's my biggest, like, most interesting thought. I think on that's not true either. My other thought's way more interesting on Liza P is that it's a very, very linear game, and I still enjoyed it despite the fact that
I mean, linear doesn't mean bad.
No, it's just that in that formula, I didn't expect it, and B, I'm like you. I'm like, oh, like, that's such an essential part of the Soulsborne, like, Sekiro games, that to strip it out basically completely, I would have thought it would have, I don't know, had a bigger impact than it did. I was surprised how little of an impact it had on the feeling, and the fact that it made me think about other Souls games and go, like, instead of being like, oh, what would Liza P had looked like more non-linear, I was like, oh, what would some of the Souls games look like more linear? Would they be just as fun or more? Especially like Bloodborne. I'm like, because Bloodborne has such, like, that, like, evolution of, like, oh my god, it's aliens, right? And, like, hey, making that like a really linear game, I think would be fine, you know. Also, Liza P has DLC coming, and they tease it right at the end of the game. It's fucking Dorothy from
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, and they show her clicking a guy whose name his name starts with P. He's like some character in the game. You find out, like, oh, he's like an informant or something right at the end. Big spoilers. And he goes, he's like, yes, and we need to find her, Dorothy. And it shows like a book on a table.
You should throw up spoiler things. Like if people watch this, they're gonna be pissed off that you're like spoiling stuff. Like they could be playing Liza P. And they're gonna look at it and be like, "Why would we watch this podcast where they ruin?"
Yeah. We'll change the name to spoilers included, and
we should include timestamps in the thing, and it's like skip, like we everything's spoiled. Just fucking click the timestamp if you don't want to hear spoilers.
We should do
that section.
Shout out for the live viewers. But anyway, it's a minor spoiler.
Yeah, you fucking ruined it for Trav.
It's like, a minor spoiler. There's going to be Dorothy deals. This could be wrong, but they just show that like it literally fucking shows her feet, and she goes click, 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 and you're like, I was just like, what the fuck?
The reason why I asked about like the level design last time is because I noticed that the game was linear,
and I was noticing that too while playing. Oh, like, I just assumed like it was coming. Like, oh, there's going to be divergent paths, or maybe I hadn't found them. And I was like, no, not really. I think that's a bigger spoiler than any story spoiler. It's like, hey, the whole game is linear. There are no side paths.
But if some people don't give a shit about that, like I said, I've seen so many people say this is the first game. This is the first Souls-like I've ever played, and it's
so
like,
they wouldn't even. Yeah.
Plus, it's not a Souls-like, so
right.
Shout out. You don't know your genres. If you played the Souls games, you would know Sekiro is a Souls game. Made by the company, so it is. That's how it works.
Armored Core 6
Souls game
is a Souls game.
The
other thing that I also brought up last time. It's such a big spoiler, but it's so important.
Well, we already addressed spoilers, so that's
huge
fine.
Spoilers. Trav, I could probably I could probably say this in a way that's not incredibly spoilery. You know how I mentioned that it's like a meta, like, oh yeah, it's a game about the fact that it's mimicking being a Souls game.
Yeah.
It leans so heavily into it, I couldn't even believe it. I couldn't even believe by the end of the game that, like, it's completely, like, that has to be what the game is about. So, the souls in the game that you're collecting, like your currency, it's called Ergo. It's what you use to level up. And Ergo is what powers like all this technology in the world. It's also what caused the puppets to go mad, and it's what caused monsters. So Ergo can create puppets or mimics or abominations and like monsters. And then you come to find out at the end of the game that all of the Ergo is coming from a single source, and it's a fucking alien lady that, like, they have her hooked up to a machine, and they're just bleeding her dry of all of this life force that is like a conscious, and they're like, yeah, it's the essence of the soul. And the game is so on the nose about the fact that we are literally taking the essence of a Souls game. We are taking Miyazaki's ideas, hooking them up to a machine, and fucking pumping it into our game. And it's also representative of the fact that, like, yeah, there's these garbage Souls games out there because people are making garbage based on these ideas, and people are making mimics, and that you are the one puppet that actually truly inherited the soul. And I just was like, dude, it couldn't be more accurate and more clearly
it's a shame
the
that
intention.
It's not a Souls-like, because then it would make more sense.
But the fact is that, like, too, that I almost wonder if it addresses that a little bit, in that, like, at the end of the game you kind of have the choice, like, oh, am I a real boy or am I a puppet? And the canonical ending is
I'm a real boy.
No, that's the wrong one.
But that's the true one. The game is something different.
No, the game is acknowledging that, no, I am just a puppet. I am something different. A real boy would be, oh, I'm a Souls game. Oh, I'm a real Souls game.
I think I'm a real boy is I'm a game of my own. I'm a puppet is...
No, the way that it's presented is that, like, you basically, in becoming a real boy, are, like, you're basically given a choice at the very end. Whatever, we address spoilers. Like, the bad choice is like, oh, become a real boy, do what your daddy do what daddy wants of you, you know. And Geppetto's
Okay,
like,
so like I'm my own game.
you're like, oh,
is
I'm my
a
own
puppet.
game. No, I might be a puppet, but I'm my own thing. I am my own version of life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the game really,
Yeah, see,
it's
I don't
extremely
think
on the nose.
I don't think the game is a Souls game, and it sounds like the game almost
acknowledges that, hey, I'm kind of not. I'm my own thing,
Right.
but I'm a great thing in myself.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's the core
Obviously,
takeaway.
heavily inspired.
And in like very much like on the nose about it, even in the narrative. Yeah, dude, there's a lot of fun stuff like that in the game about like puppets and mimicry and monsters and fables and even the fact that they lean into the fact that that they're getting the idea from like an alien is like so like, dude, we're fucking ripping off Bloodborne. Like we know.
Well, even more so because Miyazaki's Japanese, they're Korean, so he would quite literally be an
You're
alien.
an alien, dude.
Yeah.
Like you're a fucking.
You're from somewhere else. You're an alien.
Not here. Yeah. Yeah. But that's a good one.
The timing on that could have been a lot better, but that is a good one.
It was a good one. Anyway, yeah, I just was really blown away by a lot of aspects of Lies of P. I do think that by the end, my opinion did drop from it being a 5 out of 5 to a 4 out of 5, but it's an extremely strong 4 out of 5. And the stuff that made it drop were some of the bosses. I think were annoying. They were challenging in a way that was an annoyance rather than fun.
Was there a
little
gimmick
too
fight?
often? Let me think. I'm gonna go with no. Like no. There's not a gimmick fight. There are some bosses with some cool gimmicks, but there isn't like a gimmick fight. You know what I mean?
I mean, even the Souls games have pivoted, away from that a lot. I hate seeing it.
But even Elden Ring has like shit, right? Like, isn't there like the equivalent of the Well, first of all, Radon is a kind of a gimmick fight in Elden Ring, but that might be the closest the game gets. And you can just fight him normal.
Yeah, he's also an optional gimmick.
Yeah,
like you don't have to.
You can
in the
engage with the gimmick if you want.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue that about Yorm, but it's like, yeah, you're gonna fight him with a normal sword instead of the Stormbringer because
you do that with the Storm King in Demon Souls. You just pluck him with arrows.
Oh, you can? I'd never even tried that. Jesus. So yeah, hey, they're all optional. Beta Chaos is a gimmick fight. A horrible one.
I like that fight.
Anyway, yeah, that's probably all my thoughts on Lies of P. Sorry for the spoilers. I'll throw some timestamps in there.
Just do timestamps, and then at the start we can say like we should just have like a general spoiler warning or something somewhere. It's like, dude, if we talk about something, there's gonna be spoilers. It's
I'll put it like literally at the start of the video. I'll say spoilers for Lies of P, and then I'll put it on the screen when they're incoming, like so that, and then I'll put the timestamps. Yeah.
I started playing Jade Empire this weekend. It's a BioWare RPG, like an old school BioWare RPG. Came out around the time the Knights of the Old Republic games came out.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I'd heard about it.
It's you're like a martial artist. You're the fuck are you? You're like a soul spirit monk. Is that what you are? A spirit monk? It's slight spoilers. You find that at the end of the tutorial, but
I'll add the timestamps.
It's
spoilers
interesting.
For Lies of P and Jade Empire.
Yeah, that game came out 25 years ago. I think we're fine. It's an interesting, like playing that game's really weird. I think it did not age well at all. The combat is really, really rough. It reminds me of like action combat before Arkham Asylum. And it's just like, yeah, it's rough. It's you're often like fighting against like 5 dudes at the same time. And there's some cool stuff in the combat, like you can have like 4 stances on your hotbar, and the stances.
Can you back up a little bit? You might have said, and maybe it just slipped my mind. Third person.
Yeah, it's like third person. It's almost, I guess, like Dragon Age perspective. Like, I mean, it's like
like kind of semi top down, a little bit pulled back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, it's Knights of the Republic. Dragon Age was made by.
Got it. So it's very much like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it dice rolly or
No? So that's the main difference. Is it's action combat.
okay?
There's not dice rolls in combat. Well, there might be dice rolls in like for damage numbers or something that you don't see.
But it's not like swing miss.
right.
Like
It's no. Did you punch the guy and hit them? Did you connect the
Yeah,
hitbox?
Yeah.
And it's so rough. Like you'll often be like fighting against like 3 to 5 guys, and like they're all run up to you and start hitting you, and like you hold the block button, and like a giant orange energy shield like appears around you, and you just block everything. Nothing hurts you. Nothing can hit you until somebody tries to do like a power attack, and it's like this very flashy, like they start glowing like with almost electricity when they're doing it, and it's like, okay, don't try to guard that. It's a guaranteed hit if they hit you. So you just like roll out of the way, and then just wail on them. But it's like there's 5 guys doing that, and it's just really clunky. It's not super smooth. There's some cool stuff where it's like you get like transformations. So it's like, oh, in the middle of combat, I can be like comboing a dude and then change to a different stance, and now I can be using my weapon, or I can change. What?
Big fuck up.
What?
I'm gonna kill myself, dude.
You can change in combat and like change your stances, and some of them are like big transformations where it's like, oh, you get one pretty early where it's like, oh, you turn to a giant toad, and it's like, oh, you start comboing as a giant toad. You get like, oh, you can shoot like little fireballs out and stuff, but the combat's just really rough. But the thing that stands out the most about it that doesn't age well is like the RPG stuff. It's it's so hard to play like old school choice and consequence oriented RPGs after playing like Disco Elysium.
Oh.
And it's like, oh, okay,
yes.
You've played now a choice and consequence RPG where like the choices and consequences are like happening all the time, and that you don't even understand that your choices had consequences because the game isn't even showing you those, right? Like there are consequences to your character build, the choices that you make at the very start of the game in Disco Elysium, as far as like what information is getting presented to you and how are you interpreting certain things. Like there's in dramatic consequences to every single choice that you make in terms of like character building and just dialogue in general. Jade Empire is like the most run-of-the-mill, here's your bar of good and evil. Did you do that or did you not? And it's like, man, it's so hard to go back to those types of RPGs after playing, like the next step in them, I guess. Where it's like, oh, like a game that really has the writing fleshed out, like going back to these ones where it's every NPC you walk up to, it's like, can you tell me about this? How are you? How did you come here? Blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, dude, it's so fucking dry. It's so different than a game like Disco Elysium. It makes it really rough. I was surprised because like I was playing at the start and like the very first thing you do is basically combat. And I was expecting like, oh, combat didn't age well. This might like rub me the wrong way, but that's okay. Like I can get around that, no problem. But what I wasn't expecting was to get into the narrative stuff and be like, holy shit, this didn't age well. This almost feels like it feels like Fallout 4. Like it's like you go and you talk to people. Are you going to do the thing or not?
That's a modern game.
Are you going to ask them for information? Is there even an option to I mean, everybody has options for information in this. It's not quite as bad as Fallout 4. But it's just it's so old school in the way that it handles its decision making that I was shocked. I was like, "Oh,
are you going to keep playing it, or are you kind of like, or did you beat it? Like, how much of it have you played?"
No, I'm still in I'm anticipating that there's 3 acts.
Okay, and you're in Act 1?
And I'm still in Act 1.
Oh, okay.
So I've beaten like the first major event of the game, and like getting into the second stuff now.
And you're gonna keep playing it, or are you kind of like, ugh?
I'll probably play it a little bit more and see if it's worth finishing.
Have you looked up reviews or like what made you pick it up?
Oh, it's one of those old school BioWare games. I've had it forever.
You were just looking through your Steam library, or did you see something
No,
online?
I've tried to play it off and on for like 2 years now, but I've had issues with running it.
Oh.
With like weird things with the config and being in 4K, and it just doesn't fucking work. But I finally got it to work. With
Is there a mod or something, or
just some any tweaks?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's tough to evaluate too, 'cause, right? It's an RPG, and so it's like, okay, maybe they're like easing you into the RPG stuff, and so that's why the choices seem a little
got it
binary and light.
Like maybe it does kind of expand out from that.
I'm not expecting it to.
It sounds like a similar situation to me with Lies of P, where I'm like, oh, it's linear. I wonder if that's going to change. And if it's like, oh, with the decisions in a CRPG being that light, does it stop being a CRPG?
Like, yeah, the only, I mean, so there's two things I've done, I guess, that are like, well, I guess there's technically three that are like optional things. One of them is like, there's a puzzle at the very start of the game that you can go do. That's like, okay, you don't have to do this, and the reward for getting it is like a couple of permanent stat points. It's like, okay, that's neat. Obviously, you didn't have to do this. This was like a way optional thing I did, but that wasn't like an RPG thing. That was just like, okay, so there's gonna be like side shit to do in places, little puzzles to solve. Okay, that's nice. I like that. But then the other thing, like the only RPG decision I've had to make is like your dojo, your temple gets attacked, and this girl like gets injured in the attack, and you have to go like find these herbs to heal her. And you go to the guy and talk to him. And he's like, "Oh, I don't have those herbs, but what you need is this herb. Go talk to the vendor. He'll sell it to you. Don't let him sell you this other herb. It'll make the pain go away, but it won't actually like help heal. So she'll still need to rest, whatever." And I was like, okay. And so I go and I talk to the vendor, and he's like, yeah, you can get this herb, or you can go do this one. It's just as good. It'll dull the pain. It won't like heal her, but you know, all she has to do is rest. It's not a big deal, but it won't hurt anymore. And so you can choose whether or not to give her the good one or the bad one. I did the good one, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll give her the good one. It's $20 more. I don't care.
Real money?
I have no idea what the currency is. I think it's gold or silver.
Not a microtransaction.
And you give her the stuff, and it's the reason it's important is because there's like a fight that you do immediately afterwards. Like she's like, oh, I set the record for like the most people fought at the same time in the dojo. If you want to beat my record, you'd have to fight all the people I fought and me. And so it's like, oh, do you give her the one that completely heals her, and then you have to fight all of them and her, or do you give her the one that just makes her think that she's healed, and then fight everybody and her, and then go fucking beat her up? But I think if you do that, you fucking like maim her or kill her when you fight her, because she's like, she wasn't healed, and then you go beat the shit out of her. And they say that like 4 times. Like, if she tries to fight right now, she might never walk again and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, I guess you could have maimed her, but the fight was still really easy, even if you gave her the full heal. So it's like, why would you choose the evil option?
Well, if you're evil. Some people, when they play games, they're like, they genuinely are role playing, and they're like, oh, I'm a bad guy.
Yeah, I role play too. I role play as a pragmatist. And so I always do the thing that is the most beneficial to me.
That's not role playing. That's who you are.
Right. That's how I role play. And
role play in life.
Being evil isn't like, I love being evil in games when being evil is justifiable by being the most beneficial thing.
Right.
It's like, oh, like in fucking BioShock, it's so bad, the choice between saving and killing the little sisters, because it's like, you can kill the little sisters and you harvest more of the
juice.
Yeah, whatever the juice is from them. What is the juice?
Adam? No, is that right?
That might be right.
That might be right. Travis, can you go ahead and check? Is it called Adam or is it called Eve?
It's not called Eve. What do you harvest from the little sisters?
It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna put like a technical difficulty screen instead of showing all the scenes where we're fucking with shit. Because there's like parts where Trav and you know, where you and Trav are talking. And it's just gonna sound fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
Oh,
Yeah.
the Little Sisters.
Yeah, the Little
Saying, what are
Sisters.
they called?
No, what's the juice that you harvest from them called?
They're called Little Sisters,
Adam.
and you.
Adam.
Hey,
Uh,
I'm a real boy.
in fucking the evil one, you get like more from them right away, but in the good one, they like if you save them, you get less right away, but they give you fucking gift bags like periodically, and like
So it actually doesn't matter. Yeah.
no, it's super early in the game. It's already more beneficial to have saved them. You get more of the upgrade juice overall.
Right. Right.
And it's like by the end of the game, it's way more fucking
Right.
upgrade juice to save them. And then at the end of the game, they have like a cutscene depending on if you did the evil, neutral, or good ending. And like the good one is like, yeah, you like died surrounded by your daughters who loved you because you saved. And the bad one is like you die alone, a miserable old person. And it's like, so not only did
It's
you
so
not,
corny.
not only did you get less upgrade juice, you also deserve to die alone. And it's like,
It's funny.
why would you ever want the evil option then?
I mean, I think video games have gotten better about that type of stuff. I mean, not all of them, but I do think like older games were really just messing with the idea of like different options, and it was like, dude, like programming that's hard enough. I mean, like the outcomes are extremely black and white and like lame. You know, even like Mass Effect is like, dude, that was one of like the selling points in Mass Effect 1 and 2, and as the series went on, it's just like, oh, no, none of it mattered, and you could either be a good guy or a bad guy. Like
It's all the same.
Yeah. And then there's the middle option. You know, it's like, and even like Fallout. You know, am I wrong in saying that like, oh, Fallout 4 was much more like clear cut, like good guy, bad guy, neutral options versus like Fallout 3 and New Vegas, which I think played a little bit more with like the gray area. Is that right?
I don't know that Fallout 4 has bad guys you can side with.
Oh, really? Like it's like, no, you're playing good guy.
It's all shades of good guy. It's all
Fallout 3 and New Vegas aren't as much like that, right? They're a little bit more
New Vegas is way better about
right.
it.
But I thought even 3 had like a little bit more gray area. Like you're always
Fallout 3. You have a couple of options at the end for an ending, but there's not. It's not like are you siding with factions necessarily?
Okay.
It's just how do you deal with the water purification at the end.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And even then, that's all fucked up. Like Fallout 3 is so bad. In the initial release of the game, there's a companion you can get that's a super mutant. Super mutants are immune to radiation. So in order to go like treat the water purification plant, you have to put in like is it a GEC? I don't fucking remember what you do, but you have to put in a thing to like make it so that the water purifier works. And you can be at the end of the game and something happens with the plant and it like malfunctions and it gets flooded with radiation. And like the good ending is to go in there and while it's all irradiated and die and like do it to save the wasteland. But you could have your super mutant companion with you and be like, hey, can you go in there? Like you're immune to radiation. And they'll be like, no, you're a pussy. You shouldn't be asking that.
That's
like
so
they
funny.
shame you for being like, oh, there are ways that I could do this without dying. Can I do that? And they're like, no.
That's so tight.
Yeah.
Thinking about like like BioShock and these old BioWare games and stuff, Fallout. I hate all the fucking generation of Fallout games and Skyrim and all that shit that was like, that's when those series blew up, because like, yeah, dude, there was Fallout 1 and 2, and there were Elder Scrolls 1 through 3, but they were much less mainstream. It's around Oblivion and Fallout 3 and then up till today that like you have that Bethesda RPG game. I hate all those. I think that like history will not look kindly on them.
New Vegas
is an outlier. Yes.
Yeah.
And same thing with like Mass Effect. I do think history will look, and already is looking fondly on Knights of the Old Republic, probably 1 and 2, but I think all the other BioWare games are absolute dog shit. And I think that BioShock is one of the most overrated games I've ever heard people talk about. People talk about that game like it's life-changing. And I just am like, dude, it's it's one of the most like generic first person shooter template video games I've ever played. And the things with like the little sisters is just an example of like how actually not deep or interesting the entire game is, where it's like, dude, this core fucking mechanic that's meant to be like, oh, a decision of who you are as a character in this game world is so flat and uninteresting that like I really can't comprehend people that would give that game like a 9 out of 10 or a 4 out of 5 or whatever. I think those are all 3 to 2 out of 5 games. All of them. Every single one that I just talked about, except for New Vegas and Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah, BioShock's strongest point is the atmosphere.
Atmosphere is decent. And I don't think it's great. I think it's
no,
decent.
it's great. It's way better than decent. It's really cool.
3 out of 5, I think.
No, it's great. It's really cool exploring exploring this dilapidated ruin of a once great society, basically, and you get to see
right.
It's very similar to the stuff that really works in like what I was saying about Fallout 76 and Fallout 4. It's that place building is really strong in BioShock.
Yeah.
Much stronger in BioShock 1 than in BioShock 2, and by the time they get to BioShock Infinite, it's completely dead. And that's why like BioShock Infinite is horrible. It doesn't have BioShock Infinite is like what you're saying.
Is what I'm saying.
It's everything that's bad about BioShock.
There are people that fucking think that the atmosphere in that game is like up there.
No, it's really bad.
And I think that both of them are mediocre. I mean, I understand the perspective with BioShock. I understand the perspective with BioShock Infinite too. That like, I think it's really interesting exploring this society where they tried to make everything perfect, but then it all fell apart because of
BioShock
ego and greed. That's what I'm saying. They're both the same.
Yeah, that's why BioShock Infinite's not interesting.
Yeah, it's even less interesting.
Because it was already done in BioShock 1. That's the thing that makes it interesting about BioShock 1.
The most interesting part of BioShock 1 is the plane crash at the very beginning.
I don't know if that's the most interesting part, but it is a very strong opener.
It's like a strong opening to a game. And then you're like, what the fuck?
And it's not even just the plane crash. It's like then you get in the fucking bathysphere thing and you go you down. You're like, what the fuck
That's
is
the
happening?
strongest point in the game. I think that the atmosphere and the world building as that game goes on, and I will say I haven't beaten that game. I probably played half of it. But I've seen like, a bunch of, story explanations and gameplay shit for that game, so I'm very familiar. But I think that its novelty wears off fairly quick.
Well, it relies way too much on super long audio logs to build like what happened here, where it should be relying more on contextual stuff to
like
lay
that very
out.
like, oh, when you're looking around, it's this story being told where you're like, oh, in here like a murder happened and it was this character and as you're piecing things together, I think that the game falls short in that aspect. I think if it was there, then I would say, oh, it's great. Instead, I think it's a 3 out of 5. I think it's good. I think decent.
I think it's like,
decent. But it doesn't deliver on its premise. I think that it could do a much better job on delivering on its premise.
I think the atmosphere is like a tier above Dead Space. It's one tier. Dead Space has way too many reused asset things.
That's I'm like, it's either a tier above or they're the same tier, but BioShock is better. I do think BioShock is better. The USG Ishimura has so much potential as like, dude, like...
Yeah, but so does Rapture.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it...
Rapture, I think, realizes it more with unique
realizes
environments.
It slightly more, yes. Yeah.
So
USG
to me, it's
Ishimura could have been the same
and to
tier,
me it's like, okay,
but it just didn't execute
Dead
quite.
Space is a 3 out of 5. That's a 3 out of 5 environment.
That's why I think like, hey, they're both probably 3 out of 5s, but
so.
BioShock is a little higher.
A tier above.
Maybe you're right that it could be a 4, but I just found it to be. But I also played that game way after release, right? I played that game.
That's the thing about it is it came out in like 2007.
Yeah, but I don't think that gives it a pass. I'm like, oh, but in 2007, like, dude, I don't want to go watch a fucking old black and white film of horses running and be like, but at the time they had never put together moving pictures. This is incredible. Yeah, okay, well, call me jaded, but it's not good. It's a 3 out of 5. Like it's fine. Like, I can recognize it for what it did at the time. I think the Dark Souls is going to become this way, by the way. There, eventually, it's going to be like, yeah, acknowledge it for what it was, but it's going to be less engaging to engage with in the future. I think that's just how like a lot of these mediums go. I think books are good at not doing that because you disconnected. I think books are better not doing that because they're much, they're it's a very static medium. Whereas like, movies and games, even like music are all like the way that they evolve tends to start
It's weird to write off
eclipsing.
literature because literature is susceptible to the exact same
It
thing, I
is.
think.
It's just different because it's not based on the technology. It's not based on the medium itself. It's more based on ideas
presented within the medium. There's a meta progression.
There's a meta.
Yeah.
100%, totally. That like, hey, if you were to read an old story with like,
it's like one of the best books that came out a couple years ago was called House of Leaves.
Oh yeah, what was that?
It's a book about books.
Oh,
that's essentially what the book is about. And that book wouldn't have worked 25 years ago, 30 years ago. It wouldn't have made sense.
Right.
Because, it probably would have, because literature's been around for forever.
Yeah.
But it's a kind of idea that relies on having something built before it to execute.
Right.
You have to have preconceived notions of what a novel is in order to get out of what this novel is.
There's a lot of anime that builds on anime tropes, and that's a much smaller, younger medium. But my point is just that like there.
But like One Punch Man,
like where it's like, hey, those things don't work without the shonen genre. They don't work, I mean, I even think Dark Souls succeeds based on a lot of people talk about this, the way that games had gotten so easy. And games were very hand-holdy, right? That was a really common, trope and complaint that people were starting to have about games, and people were yearning for like those old school hard games. And Dark Souls comes along, and it's like that is the aspect that hooked a lot of people. Was and it's what they clearly leaned into with like, yeah, prepare to die. Miyazaki's like, dude, I wasn't even trying to make like an overly difficult game or anything. He wasn't trying to make something that went back to the classic roots of difficulty. It's just like, no, like that's just like what worked for the game, and that's what we wanted to make. But so it's interesting, and I think that like even games that I love are going to start having their quality diminished over time. Just by, technology improvements. Like, there's a lot, like we were talking about, I think on like the first podcast, like I was like, oh, Elden Ring's definitely better than Dark Souls, right? And you were like, I mean, I wouldn't say like definitely or definitively or whatever that word was, but like, you're like, I kind of see what you're saying, but I'm like, it's just a more advanced game. Well,
there's still an argument to be made for Dark Souls, I think.
Right.
But yeah, you could definitely see in 75 years when we all play games with fucking
a thing. It's like, oh
brains,
yeah, it could. Yeah. But what my perspective is that there are games that are hitting that point sooner, and that makes sense. Like the worse the game, the more that like, hey, like they're gonna seem even more bad sooner than a game like Dark Souls that has that history. That I mean, yeah, BioShock has some of that history. I just think that it has already aged faster. That game came out close-ish to Dark Souls, 2007, 2011. That's same console generation.
Well, I think that Doom 2016 has rendered a lot of those FPS style games as like, hey, these don't feel good.
We hit a point where hey, a new bar came out. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, actually, sorry, is a great example of that. Where like, hey, prior to that, open world games were getting really samey, and there's like this generation of open world games that was kind of leading to like this almost dead stop, and then Breath of the Wild. I used to call Tears of the Kingdom Breath of the Wild, and now I'm fucked up, and I'm calling Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom because I've overcorrected. But the idea being that, hey, now open world games, like, they have a whole new standard to live up to. So, like, yeah, dude, Far Cry 2 actually is, like, trash. But when that game came out, I remember, like, Ross talking about, like, dude, Far Cry 2 is awesome. And it's like, yeah, at its time it was, but today it's not. Whereas I think Dark Souls, like, hey, like at its time it was, and today it's still good, but it's dropping. And different games kind of drop at different levels, you know. And to me, like those old school first person, you know, immersive sim / Bethesda RPGs, I think are all dropping at like a much faster rate. And it's why, like, I don't know if you've seen that, like Starfield reviews have actually dropped like a bunch.
No, they haven't.
Yeah.
No, they haven't. I checked.
on Steam?
I saw that store. Oh, maybe on Steam, but nobody looks at those reviews.
Oh, I feel like that's pretty. Steam reviews, I feel like, are pretty indicative of, because critics don't go back and update their reviews generally unless there's like something important. But in terms of getting the feel for like, hey, what is like the audience reception on this game? I think Steam is a fairly accurate barometer where it's like, hey, dude, if Steam is started out overwhelmingly positive and it's dropped to mixed,
there are a couple.
That means that people have started.
There's a couple situations where that's not true. Like
sure, yeah.
Particularly China review bombs on Steam. If something comes out that's anti-Chinese.
When something is review bombed, it's different. I think what I've seen with Starfield is that it's not so much of a review bombing so much as it is like, hey, people have started voicing, you know, a lot of the stuff that like you and I have talked about, where it's like, this is just not as good as it might have seemed at first, you know. The reviews haven't like, you know,
plummeted.
Plummeted is a good word. I was looking for skyrocketed.
That's up.
I was like, skydived?
Who says that?
Yeah, like it's not like been extreme, but it's become more realistic, I think. I'm like, hey, Starfield should be a mixed reviewed game. It shouldn't be, in my opinion, it shouldn't even be up for as a contender for Game of the Year, and I wonder if it won't be.
I don't think it should be.
I don't think it should be at all. But I think when it came out, the argument was stronger because people were still in that phase. You know, I don't even think God of War Ragnarok should have been, because I think that game should have had the same process where on launch people were like, "Oh wow,
the audio's really bad right now."
Oh, what? Where?
On Discord stream.
Discord stream.
It's like crackling and ripping.
Oh, I wonder. Here, Trav, do us a favor. Go check on Twitch and see how it sounds there. Okay. I would also really appreciate if you kept that up and just checked here and there. That would have caught the issue we were having earlier a lot sooner. And yeah, curious if the stream is bad. Also, I see we have some chat messages. It would also be great if you want to you know, chime in with those occasionally.
Okay. I just muted your stream. I can hear you now.
Okay.
Oh wait, do we sound good on Twitch though?
Yeah, Twitch sounds good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so might just be something going on with Discord or the way that we're capturing that audio there. I do think the technical difficulties that we've had throughout this stream today have been fucking hilarious, but it's awesome because they've been they're super correctable. Like I can fix all of it in post because the Discord audio is coming in separately, and I'll do the thing with the technical difficulty screen and all that. It'll all work out, but
yeah, the Starfield reviews
horrible stream
are interesting. I think that game needs a lot of work, and I don't know that they're gonna. Yeah. I don't know if they're gonna give it the work that it needs.
I mean, I wonder though, because they have given Fallout 76 a good amount of work, right? They have improved that experience a good bit.
I don't know
but
if
that game came out in such a bad state.
Improved it.
Well, that's the thing, is that the game came out in such a bad state that they had to do something. Whereas Starfield, it's like, hey, they probably could just fuck off. They have said that they are going to release like really good mod support. So that I think that's as far as they're going to take it, and that's really as far as they took Skyrim, right? Skyrim, all they did was release that game and then let the community go wild. I mean, I'm sure they updated things, but it's not like there was like a huge Skyrim DLC.
There's multiple DLCs for Skyrim.
Are there? Are they good?
There's the Masks one.
There's not like, because Oblivion has that one that's really good, right? Like the Isle of
Shivering Isles.
Shivering Isles. There's nothing like that in Skyrim, right? Where it's like, oh, dude, this is essential playing.
What are all the Skyrim DLCs?
I thought they were, dude. I would have thought that
there's the vampire one.
Oh, I remember that. That's
there's
right.
The like the Dragon Lord Masks one.
Dude, I would have thought that game didn't have a single bit of DLC.
What's the other one? There's one more, I think.
Oh, dude, I didn't put the light up here like we do normally, but who cares?
They do. They typically do like 3 or 4
June
DLCs for
says
all their
hi.
games.
Wait,
but
can you hear Trav?
no.
Oh, you should fix that because he's talking.
John's
What'd you say,
on the
Trav?
Discord.
Yeah, he is. What'd you say, Trav?
Kong Hai June says hi.
Oh, hi, Kong. Hi, June. Appreciate it.
Hi.
I don't think you're allowed to say that. It sounds insensitive.
Because like you're smoking reefer.
I was thinking something more like yellow.
Jesus.
I saw I saw a hilarious other podcast. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
I-
What were you talking about, Starfield?
Nothing. Game sucks.
What were we talking about?
Well, you incorrectly said that Bethesda games were immersive sims again.
No. I said immersive sims and Bethesda games.
Yeah,
I specifically
weird to group them because they're so
they
completely
have
different.
some serious similarities.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
They don't.
Dude, if you're telling me that Prey is nothing like a Bethesda RPG,
Nothing alike.
then that's insane. That's like saying that Lies of P
They're
and
nothing
Dark
alike.
Souls are nothing alike. They are not necessarily the same genre.
Dude, you should play both of those games for 2 hours each, and then come back and talk about this because those games are not similar in the slightest.
I think they're extremely
In the
similar.
sense that they're both video games, they are similar.
Mm-mm. They're both
Video games.
very similar.
They're not.
Dude,
Prey 2016 and Skyrim are not similar.
they're so similar.
No,
It's
they're not.
crazy.
In what
It's
way?
Crazy.
In what way?
The way in which you interact with things in the game, the way in which you have choice and little consequence regarding how you approach the situations required to
That's
beat the game.
totally not Prey at all.
Huh? That's exactly Prey.
No, Prey has tons of choice. The decisions that you make have
They don't matter.
yeah, they
You have
do.
tons of
There
decisions,
are
but
large
they don't matter.
reaching influences to minor decisions that you make that you don't even understand are decisions that you're making. That have
Yeah.
massive consequences.
They're the same. Prey and Skyrim may as well be the same game.
Skyrim doesn't have that at all. There are no it's not like, oh, I decided to level this up in Skyrim and
That's
now
one of my
there's
biggest problems in Skyrim. But
consequences to it. That doesn't exist.
doesn't exist.
There's not NPC faction side quest things. They're not similar in the slightest.
I think they're the same game. Prey, Skyrim.
Yeah, it's a stupid take that you haven't defended at all.
Well, look. It's hard to defend when I've only played Skyrim and then have barely played BioShock, which is my barometer for MSims. Because I'm like, oh, I don't like those. But I don't like either of those games. They're both first person. All first person games have problems to me because I think first person is actually a dying genre if it's not in VR. But aside from that, I think that...
Oh, speaking of VR, I bought a Meta Quest 3.
No way! Was it because of that piano thing that I sent you?
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, that looks cool. I'll buy
That
one of
looks...
those.
Yeah, I literally... Okay, so let's talk about that. Because, Trav, did you see that video I sent for the piano VR thing?
Look cool.
Yeah, Piano Vision.
Yeah, Piano Vision. I was like, dude, I saw a guy on TikTok being like, check this out. It's so cool. I just got my Meta Quest 3 and and whatever. He's showing it off. And I'm like, what the fuck? That's legit.
There's 3
that
modes.
alone.
There's 3 modes for the Piano Vision. One is...
And I knew that you might think it was interesting because I know that you've gone on and off with I wanting to learn piano and stuff. So that's why I sent it because I was like,
Well, and I've
I wonder if
used
you-
that what is it, synesthesia,
synesthesia or whatever.
Yeah, where it's basically that, but you have it on your computer.
Yeah.
and it's
different.
that's close-ish, but you can't get
being able to turn your head and see that
see the
Guitar
things
Hero,
coming, and it's lighting up the keys, and also you can set it on a mode.
I bet
that's
you can slow
only
it
progresses when you
down. And I
play.
bet. Oh yeah, I saw that too. It only progresses when you
And
hit
you
the
can
notes.
you can do stuff like that too.
That's so. Honestly, Keep going.
There are piano apps that are similar-esque still,
Right,
where it's
right.
like you can plug a MIDI into your computer and run
Sure,
an application
sure.
and get something that's like,
Yeah.
it only progresses when you play. But that's still so much different than like the Guitar Hero lights coming down to where your fucking fingers are
On
the
any
thing.
piano. The fact that you can also do a virtual piano, so you could practice without your piano there.
So
if you're
there's three
yeah.
modes. There's like you have a real piano, like a
mhm.
grand piano,
and it
or
just
whatever.
recognizes that, which
And
you don't have to plug
like,
anything in.
You have to set it like, okay, these are the boundaries of
Yep.
my piano, and it uses your hand
Yep.
tracking to determine what keys you're playing. I've heard mixed things on that. Basically,
Oh, okay.
Apparently, the MetaQuest 3 has dog shit hand tracking.
Oh,
And so it
interesting.
constantly registers wrong keys or that you
Oh.
didn't press a key. And so if you're using the virtual piano or the real piano, there are issues in terms of like registering the key presses.
Oh, okay. That seems like a pretty huge problem. So,
For the game side of it, yes. But if you're
Oh.
using it as a way to learn how to play piano, it doesn't really matter. Just having the keys come down to where your hands are supposed to
Right,
be
I
still
see.
is still pretty nice.
unless it's not registering that I did hit that key and I want the song to keep going, you have it on the mode where it's gonna.
Yeah,
delay-
that would be an
that could
issue.
potentially. But I could also imagine that stuff like that could get patched. You know maybe that's
No,
not
it's a
super
problem
hardware
with the
dependent.
MetaQuest 3
You think so?
hand
Oh, okay.
tracking. It's just not
Okay.
the hardware sucks.
You would think that like with some AI model training that like a lot of hardware issues could be compensated for by software. It's like, hey, so the software by itself,
Possibly, but they're still processing things.
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like, can it handle it?
Yeah. for sure.
So the hardware just blows. The other mode, like you mentioned, is the virtual one where it's the exact same thing, but it's a
You don't need a
imaginary
piano,
keyboard.
yeah.
That one seems.
I think that's cool if you like. Oh, I'm looking to learn to play piano, but I just don't have a piano. Hey, that's neat. Like,
or like
I'm just trying the app.
or like
whatever.
I'm on a plane or something.
Yeah,
and I'm
you
going to
wanna
be a
practice.
weirdo and sit there. And
I wonder if you need a
practice.
surface or if it'll just like
You can float it in the air.
yeah, because that's on a plane. Just
Yeah.
And
then the most useful one is the MIDI one, where it's you MIDI USB
Oh,
into the headset.
so you can MIDI into the headset.
And
So is that what you're gonna do?
Yeah, and so that is the one that's
that
the most accurate.
solves all
you
the
don't have to worry
problems.
about hand tracking.
I see.
And it has, like the pianos built into the app. So like, everything is handled via the app.
That's really cool, actually. And
yeah.
I bet then you could also have the audio go into the headset, right? Because I mean, the MIDI is right, and then you don't need to like, have my piano playing the music out loud and this or that. Like,
Right,
you can
yeah.
have everything going through the headphones of your
Right.
MetaQuest. Yeah.
Yeah, like my
So when's it showing up? Is it that was
it
a
was
pre-order,
supposed
right?
to show up yesterday,
Oh,
but it didn't. And then it sent me a thing this morning that was like, this is delayed. We'll deliver it today or tomorrow.
interesting.
And then it gave me an option to cancel it. And then I was like, well, let's see if like order a new one. Can I get it here like today? And it was like, no, but you can get it here tomorrow. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll cancel this one because it's like fucked up. And then I'll go just order a new one. And I go to cancel it. It's like, oh, if it's like you can cancel it, but in the rare event that it still gets delivered, just return it for your refund. I'm like, well, I don't want to fucking do that. Have it delivered.
We'll see if it shows up.
Yeah, it's supposed to be delivered today or tomorrow or Monday.
Well, or how much are they?
$500.
That's not bad, man. Because you're gonna be able to play VR games on it.
I'm not going to. Though.
I know, but
only gonna use it for the piano thing.
Which is why I was like, honestly, that app alone is worth like a
I mean,
investment.
my
but the fact that you could play RE4 VR or whatever is like, hey, like $500 isn't bad.
my piano controller is like $2,500. So I'm like, $500.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever. That if that feature was built into the virtual
Yeah.
piano, I would have paid $3,000 for it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's sick. That's awesome that you bought one. I'm curious if so the MetaQuest 3 doesn't let you use it as a VR peripheral for PC games, right? It's all inclusive. Because I'd be curious
I think
about that.
it does.
Because if it did, then maybe there's some games that would be like Phasmo. Like maybe you could check out Phasmo in VR because that's supposed to be good, right?
No, because the hand tracking's bad, and that's like the
But
most.
Phasmo is like such a game where like
It's the most important thing in VR is to have good
is
hand
good
tracking.
I'm just curious, like, hey, like, let's say you can plug in your MetaQuest 3 and try it with Phasmo. Would you at least try it and be
No.
like, hey, how is it? You're not even gonna give it a shot.
No, because it's dog shit.
What if it's like, hell, well, it's fine. I
It's
mean,
not.
dude, the fucking PlayStation VR that we played is basically dog shit, and you were surprised at how like decent it was. That game,
That at least has a bar, doesn't it?
yeah, yes,
Yeah,
it
that's
does.
not the way that. The
Yeah,
meta
it's all
works.
based on the
Yeah.
cameras on the thing. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I would probably try it at least just to be like, hey, like especially a game like Phasmo where it's like, dude, like it's not like Half-Life Alyx where, you know, like you're spinning the weapons around and it's like, no, like I'm just playing Phasmo in VR. It's already a fairly simple
that's
mechanic game.
To me, the most compelling part about VR
is the hand tracking and
the ability to
immersiveness.
emote in a game in a way that you can't.
Um,
Like I was saying
Apparently,
earlier
the
about
PSVR 2 is very basic with its hand tracking as well, where it really only gets like your index and like it's like so you can only do like a couple of like hand motions.
It's what I was saying about
But it's supposed to
Phasmo
be
earlier, where I'm
decent.
like, the game leads itself to a lot of like comedic moments because of the way it's structured.
Right.
That is amplified then when you do VR, and it's like, oh, not only can you do funny things in like the way you communicate and walk around, but the ways that your character can emote are now enhanced, and it's like, oh yeah, you can have way more fun, messing around in the game because of that. And so I don't want to bother with
fuck it.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
I mean,
setting it up is probably a pain.
I don't want to buy another VR thing until it's like really good. Because I had tried that first PlayStation VR, and that was good enough. Where like I played some stuff and I had some fun with it, but I don't want another taste. I would either do something like what you're doing, which is like, oh, I'm buying this for a very specific purpose.
I was gonna wait till the Index 2, but then this came out.
Like, oh, that's cool.
I was like, yeah, that's
$500 is not bad. The Index 2 is going to be $1,500 or something, right? It wasn't the Index 1 like $1,000.
It probably started that high. I think it's cheaper now.
It's probably cheaper now, but I would expect the Index 2 will be a little bit pricier of a headset just because it's so high quality. The MetaQuest 3 is a sounds like a good entry level option, for like, hey,
well, that's like what they're trying to appeal to. They want
just buy
to
a
buy
VR
it for
headset.
kids for Christmas and shit.
Yeah.
The other thing is it's a pass-through headset, so you can, I mean, obviously because you can see your piano when you do it.
Right.
Yeah, you see
stuff,
can turn it on and see the room and have AR, not just VR.
Oh, I wonder what AR porn is going to start looking like. Like, yeah, we not only do hand tracking, but we do shaft tracking as well.
Well, because it is like, if it's
Very
tracking your
similar.
hand, you put a woman
Yeah,
in her face or whatever, and like over your
so your hand instead of
It's
your
her
hand,
head.
it's her. That means, I mean, it's coming, and so am I.
Surprised the tech's not there yet.
It's there. Oh, it's got to be there.
I'm there.
I'm not a puppet. I'm a real boy.
Do we need a break today, or do you have to piss or anything? I kind of have to piss.
All right,
actually.
let's break.
Yeah, we're gonna take a quick break.
We'll take questions from the audience after the break. Chattioli, if you can,
facilitate.
Facilitate. Fellatio.
I don't think that's the right word.
Fellatiate.
I'm gonna hit the wrong button.
I can do whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Fellatiate
I'm
me, baby.
coming.
Quick questions.
It's so funny that you were just talking about that because it would be just like if you went to a store and there was like no watermelon stock. What the fuck? What's? I don't know. And we're back.
Jesus, bro.
I wonder if it's just all coming through your mic.
Just super quiet. Man, we're back like a war in the Middle East.
See,
Oh my God.
That's a good one.
that is a good one. I mean, it's a bad one, but it's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Chattioli.
Yeah, what you
hit us
got,
up.
Chattioli?
All right. So today's questions. First one. In a movie about your podcast, who would you want to cast to play you?
I guess it depends on what's happening. I'm gonna guess that this is a movie in which it's like a what are those it's a very specific type of documentary, like the Air Jordan one where it's called people have like a semi-derogatory name for it.
Yeah, it's like a corporate.
Yeah, like a
documentary.
corporate whatever. Yeah. So I'm guessing it would be like that, where it's all about our success and like and I'm gonna go with I would want the person to play me to be. I mean, the funniest thing would be like Danny DeVito or something like really just like what? But I think more realistically, I don't know, probably like Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, DeCap.
Yeah.
Didn't
What about
realize
you?
that's who you meant?
I have one for you, but it's pretty obvious.
Elon Musk.
I don't think that would really work for me.
It would just be funny, I think, to have
Imagine
Musk
Elon
do it.
Musk and Danny DeVito, dude.
Yeah.
It would be so. Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What do you think, Trav? And who would you be, or who would play you?
Morgan Freeman.
I mean,
Oh, that's a good one.
it's literally the voice of God. You know what I mean?
He
Like
might
in the
be
pod.
dead though by the time the movie gets made. That's a very real possibility. So would you be?
Yeah,
I thought he
AI?
already
gotta
was.
hurry.
Is he dead?
We gotta hurry.
You gotta hurry. Yeah, he might die.
For the movie, is Morgan Freeman dead?
Oh.
No, but he's very old.
Yeah. See, he's not dead.
What if we did? What if we did Morgan Freeman as Trav,
He's 86.
Jack Nicholson as me, and Robin Williams as you?
Robin Williams is dead.
I thought they were all. I literally picked 3 dead actors.
Jack Nicholson is alive. Morgan Freeman is alive.
Is that what you guys were saying?
Bro,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
What other questions you got, Trav?
Next question. Will you be playing Super Mario Wonder?
Oh, probably not.
Yeah, if you take Super Mario Wonder and you take out the super, you turn Mario into Luigi, and then you take out Luigi, and then you take out the W and der, and then
Thought we already took out Wonder, but okay.
flip around what's left.
What's left?
That's the answer.
All right, Trav, go ahead and do the translation for that.
No.
Oh, okay.
You got it, Trav.
What about you? Are you playing that?
Yeah.
Are you?
You are? You're gonna play Mario
play that.
Wonder?
I don't
Okay.
play any of the.
Not I'll. Like you would play it, or you will play it.
I will.
So here's the
Oh,
thing.
okay.
I haven't played any Mario game besides Mario Maker 1 and 2 since Super Mario Sunshine.
I was gonna say, oh, for me, I guess it's Galaxy 2. I played Galaxy 2, but that's still a long time ago. It's like 20,
Yeah, so I don't play
2008.
I don't play the mainline Mario games.
Yeah, me either. That's not my thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think if you do, like you do, Trav, you know what I mean?
What was that supposed to mean?
You know.
Yeah. Don't make us say it again. There's enough going on in the world.
I don't say what.
What's the next question?
Which anime would you want adapted at the same quality as the One Piece live action? Like next.
Dang, at the same quality, it can't be more.
Yeah, it has to, can it be more? No, I like no because then it's like, oh, any anime that you think, because then it could be better. I think so. I actually think that's a better question, that at that quality, because it's not perfect, but it's it's decent. There's aspects that are really good, and there are aspects that are not.
I think Monster would get a good adaptation because that doesn't rely a whole lot on like special effects. And that's where like so I've seen all of One Piece now. And,
okay.
Watching that live adaptation, I just punched my mic. watching that live adaptation,
Travis.
the parts about it to me that are the worst are the parts that are like TV, where it's like, hey, the special effects were really bad here. The way things shot here were really shot like TV.
Yes.
Like budgetary stuff. And it makes sense because it's like, yeah, there's budget limits because of what you can do with special effects. So like, I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm going to do an adaptation, I want something that's going to be light on special effects. I don't want it to be like a visual feast because that's not going to get adapted right. That's going to look better in a cartoon or on a comic book.
Right.
So I want something slow-paced, relatively dry and serious, and that doesn't have a lot of special effects. And I think that Monster fits all of those check boxes.
I've never I actually know nothing about Monster other than its name. Like I know that exists, but I don't know what the aesthetic is. I don't know the plot. I know nothing about it.
Yeah, Monster's great.
What is it?
I got introduced to it in like, oh man, so long ago. It was like 2009, 2008. I saw it was like a list on IGN, and it was like the top 100 most iconic villains of all time. And there was some anime guy on there, Johan, whatever the fuck his name is, and he was like number 2 on the list.
Like, who is
like
that?
Number 1, GLaDOS. Number 2, fucking Johan. And I was like, who is this guy? And it was like, oh yeah, from the iconic Monster series, Johan. And I was like, huh? I was like, all right, check that out. And read that, and that manga's great.
Oh, that's
fantastic. Cool. The anime is also supposed to be decent, but the manga is really, really good.
New trailer for Kaiju number 8 just came out. Do you know about that manga at all?
Don't know anything about it.
It's like people are as hype, it seems, as they were for Chainsaw Man kind of thing. Like very similar following of like, oh no, this is a slept on, but really, really good manga that we're super hyped is getting. And I forget what studio's doing it. It's a big name, but it's not MAPPA or Trigger. It's I forget who it is. But anyway, the trailer looks like nothing to me. I'm just like, what is there's monsters and there's like guys. Like I got nothing, you know.
Okay.
So I know about. I guess I know more about that than Monster, though.
Yeah, you don't know if there's monsters and monsters.
I don't. When you said Monster, the first thing I thought of was like that Halle Berry movie where she's naked. Monster's Ball. That was what I first thought of. She, I believe, has sex with the guy from Bad Santa. Who's that guy? Do you know who I'm talking about, Trav? You know the Bad Santa movie?
Heath Ledger.
That's not right.
That's who you would choose
Robin
to play
Williams. That would be so good. Robin Williams, Heath Ledger, and Morgan Freeman. They're all
Morgan
dead.
Freeman's not dead.
Who's like a good old dead guy?
Jesus, dude.
Who's like a good old dead guy? Like Anthony Hopkins?
Is he dead? The guy who plays Saruman.
Oh!
Is Gandalf dead?
Yeah.
Gandalf would be a good one.
I think Ian McKellen is dead.
Yeah.
And the original Dumbledore is dead.
Oh, original Dumbledore's dead.
And the guy that took his place, I think, have all died. And Saruman. Yeah. So
any of those actors would be good choices.
Okay, so we'll do Ian McKellen, Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman's not dead.
And Al Pacino? Al Pacino, Danny DeVito, and Travi Dorito.
What's your adaptation?
What are you talking about?
What's your adaptation? That was the question.
Oh, the anime adaptation. Right. I think mine would be... I mean, I'm so lame, dude. I'm so fucking lame, but the answer is Dragon Ball. I hate...
They already did an adaptation for that.
No, he said to the same quality as the one.
Yeah, they did that.
No.
Evolution.
It's way worse quality.
It's like the same.
I think for me, it would be Dragon Ball. And I think there's definitely better anime, right? Like Hunter x Hunter, better. Naruto probably would even be better to adapt than Dragon Ball Z.
You said Dragon Ball, I thought.
Oh, Dragon Ball. Yeah. I mean the entirety of it, though, like as the manga, if you're going to take the manga and turn it. But he did say anime adaptation, huh? I think Dragon Ball still. I think the other option that I would pick would be I don't know, like Attack on Titan. Like that one would be like they've tried those and they're absolutely trash.
Yeah, that would be
Okay,
horrible.
do it a little better quality.
Be horrible.
All right, what else we got? What other questions? Any?
Yeah. A couple more.
Couple.
What do you? Oh, do you just want one more?
No,
No,
keep
I
them
was just
coming.
excited.
Oh, okay. What do you think of a fighting game where all the characters are like famous dogs?
No,
and it's as gory as a Mortal Kombat game.
That I think that sounds
It's like
fucking
cartoon
awesome.
dogs.
Like, yeah, you've got like Air Bud versus Scooby Doo,
Oh
and
my
they're fucking ripping
God.
each other's spines out. It sounds
Every time the like
awesome.
Airbud has a basketball as like a projectile that he throws and it goes bonk and it like blood like blasts out of their faces when they get hit. Like they're getting hit so hard.
That sounds so
The
cool.
teeth are flying.
You've got the
And when they kill each other, it's like it's like
you've got like the Jack Scrappy Doo from the live action Scooby Doo
Holy shit.
movie. You, that could be a game.
that could actually like, hey man, yeah, it's called Super Smash Dogs and it's like fucking so silly. I think it could work.
Well, part of it was it had to be gory as Mortal Kombat.
Dog Combat with a K.
Is it just
title?
dogs? Is there a cat DLC where it's like the cats and dogs, and then
That should be like a sequel. The DLC should be like
okay, wait, who's the launch cast? This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's work through this.
Scooby and Scrappy are in 100%.
Yeah, and I think Scrappy should be like a transformation he can do.
He has an install. Sure.
Yeah, he has an install. Yes.
Sure. Scooby and Scrappy, Air Bud, Crypto the Super Dog, Clifford.
Clifford, Beethoven.
Who's Beethoven?
You ever seen the Beethoven movies? He's a big dog. He makes a mess.
Holy shit.
Spot from C Spot Run.
I like that one.
But you don't like Beethoven?
I don't know what the fuck that is, but at least C Spot Run, those are kids' books.
Trav,
everybody
can you
knows.
confirm I'm not crazy about Beethoven? He's a big old
That's
dog
a
and he makes a
movie.
mess.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know that he makes the cut. But we can entertain it for now until we figure out what the cast is.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's a good point.
Brian from Family Guy.
Brian from Family Guy is a good
that's
one.
a great one.
Yes. Are there any other like talking dogs? Oh, like I was thinking the BoJack Horseman guy, but he's not a cool character. He's in BoJack Horseman. He's the dog that dates the girl.
Peanut Butter.
Yeah, Mr. Peanut Butter. He's okay.
We can put him with Beethoven in a side.
Yeah, like
thing.
maybe.
Yeah.
What are some good dog ones?
Iconic dogs.
Are there any Pokemon that would be like a cool dog Pokemon to throw in there, or is it stupid? That could be DLC though, where it's like the
The
DLC.
licensing is just tough. Like I think we could get
A lot of this
Clifford.
licensing is going to be.
I think we
there's
can
a
get
lot of
Clifford.
license.
I don't know that you're going to get Growlithe.
Goofy.
Goofy's
Is Goofy a dog?
He's a dog.
What about Pluto?
Yeah, they're both.
No,
look the same.
Goofy and Pluto should be a character.
They're not like a common combo.
Pluto is Goofy's dog.
No, is that right,
Yeah.
Travis? That can't be right.
Pluto is Goofy's dog.
Are you writing these down? Are we writing these down?
It's
I'm not gonna
Mickey Mouse's
Remember this
dog.
whole list? Yeah. See, Pluto doesn't have a dog because he's a dog. I mean Goofy.
Yeah, Pluto is a dog.
Yeah, and Goofy's also a dog, so he doesn't have a dog. He has a son, Max.
I think Pluto could make the cut.
Pluto could make the cut. Goofy's a maybe. That would. I think the DLC should be ones where like, what?
Other famous dogs?
How many do we got?
What about like Lassie?
If Beethoven's not
Marley.
making it, neither is Lassie.
Lassie's like a
Oh,
classic.
Marley's a good
from
one. He's just
Marley
a
and Me.
dead dog, and he like turns into a ghost as like his moves. He's like,
What's that one ghost dog?
It's not Casper.
Yeah, it's the what is that from? It's a little ghost dog with like the red nose. Am I remembering that right?
Oh, the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy.
No.
No, that Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, the Nightmare Before Christmas dog.
Does that have a name?
Probably
does.
Rover or
Yeah,
some
yeah.
shit.
Yeah. How many characters do we need for a roster? Let's think about that.
75.
His name was Zero, by the way.
0. That's a cool one.
What about Mega Man's dog?
Oh, Rush is a good one. Yeah. Yes, that's a good one. Is there a dog in Mario? Sonic?
Peach.
Hot dog, hot diggity dog, dude.
No, it was an insult. I was
Talk
calling
about
her
a
dog.
peach. I want to put my peach in that dog.
It's the other way around, but yeah. All right, I'm over it. What's the next question?
Wait, hold on. I have to answer this one. Oh wait.
What the fuck have you been doing?
Yeah, I'm into it.
You want to keep going?
No.
You want to think
No,
of more
what's the-
dogs?
No.
I feel like it's a good one to end on. I mean, I could ask more. But
I feel like that's a good one to end on. All right.
All right, thanks, Chattioli.
yeah.
Shout out Chattioli. Hey, if you want your questions answered live on the podcast, head on over to twitch.tv/.
Like a hot dog would be a good one to
W-A-T-
include.
That would actually be awesome. It's just a hot. Is there like a hot dog character though?
You could do like
Oscar
the
Mayer.
Like, yeah, the Oscar Mayer.
His
like,
name's just Oscar, and
Yeah,
he's
it's
a
a hot
fucking
dog
hot
man.
dog.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great one. Dude, we could do a whole couple episodes just on all these dog characters and how they work in the game.
Could we? What's Oscar's mechanics?
Does he like chop pieces of him off and like throw them, and he gets smaller as you play? And it's like a move he can do. So he like throws his little hot dog. He has a little knife, right? He's holding the knife, and he's like and he fucking goes, and he throws like his little.
I don't like it a knife. I like it better that he just like karate chops like
Oh.
a segment of them off.
He throws it.
Yeah.
That'd be sick. Does
Oscar's a sick
He
character.
he pulls like a mustard bottle that's as big as him, like out of nowhere. He goes like, he puts it away.
Why does he spray it on himself?
No, he's holding it like this. It's pointed like this. He's like it's a bottle. It's like this big. You know? He's like, and he pulls it out of his invisible ass, and he goes.
I wonder if you give him a whole mechanic like Peach, how she like, you know, pulls up turnips, but they can be like different turnips, and like sometimes it's a bomb, but you give him and it's like he pulls out condiments, and it's like, oh yeah, he pulls out a fucking
Pulls
pickle,
an onion,
or
a
yeah, an
pickle.
onion, a pepper, throws it.
And every once in a while, he pulls out a whole hot dog, and he just goes, "Oh!"
Yeah, I like that.
Jesus. Yeah, hot dog's a good character. Oscar, you know. Yeah,
Oscar
good
the
one.
wiener.
you could do like the wieners that what's his name draws in Superbad.
But those aren't dogs.
I thought it was a game of hot dogs.
No, it's not dogs.
Oh, you could do
the
like.
hot dog is just like, oh yeah, it's
Can you do like any of the Dalmatians characters, like the 101 Dalmatians, as maybe like that's like a group character where you play as the 101 Dalmatians, and so every time you get hit, you're losing a number of Dalmatians as your health, and so as you get down and down, like you just are down to like one dog.
I don't know if that's how the mechanic should work, but the idea of like you're the 101 Dalmatian
Is
as a
actually
character
sick.
is sick.
Yeah, that mechanic might not work in terms of like the health, but yeah, like no, that's you're a group character fighter, and you're
Yeah. Yeah, that's tight.
that actually is tight. What about the kissing dogs from the other Disney movie?
Oh,
Lady and the Tramp?
Yeah, that's a duo character.
Yeah, duo character Lady and the Tramp, and they're always connected by the spaghetti, so they're like whipping each other around like
Oh yeah,
nunchucks.
that's sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woo, woo, woo. Yeah, they're always connected. The spaghetti doesn't break. Oh, dude, that would be so tight. Or the spaghetti gets longer sometimes, and it's like, woo, and they're like, whoosh, whoosh, and then they kiss. It's like they're like, and they kiss, and it goes, and it explodes, an explosion of love or something. Dude, you could
make a game like this.
Yeah, 100%.
The licensing would be a nightmare.
Yeah, like, hey, I need Lady and the Tramp, fucking 101 Dalmatians, I need Scooby-Doo, I need fucking, what? Dude, there's so many.
Clifford.
Beethoven, it's just
Yeah.
wild.
Beethoven, right? He's not in.
What else? What else are we gonna do then?
What about Tim Allen as the Shaggy dog?
I don't think so.
I don't know that movie.
I don't like Tim Allen. I'm pretty sure he's like,
He's a raper, I think.
yeah. I mean,
I think
I wasn't gonna say it.
he's a raper. There's why dance around it? I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I don't know that he is.
We don't want to
It's
get
allegedly,
sued.
yeah.
Allegedly, he's
And are we alleging it?
no. I've heard that from someone.
Yeah. We have
One of the
heard Tim
people that
Allen.
he raped, I think, was talking to me.
Yeah, he is a raper.
It's okay. I won't make TikTok clips of this part. Tim Allen's a raper. Allegedly? All cut, all fast.
Any other good dogs?
No, I'm over this all this dog bullshit. I really don't even like dogs.
What about the dog in Guardians of the Galaxy 3?
I haven't seen that. Spoilers, there's a dog.
Movie's dog shit.
Oh, dog shit is a good character. Oh, damn.
It's
I
a
thought
fucking.
this segment was over, dude.
It starts in a paper bag, and
Holy
like the fucking
shit.
bag breaks over the course of
You
the
light
game.
him on fire.
Oh, it's such a good
It's all
mechanic.
fucking on fire bag of dog shit. Yeah, man. Maybe like Ampharos.
Is that a dog? That was like a giraffe.
I don't know what that guy is, bro. He starts out as a sheep. Yeah, man. Try. What other topics you got for
Snoop
us?
Dogg.
These are good. You got good ideas. Like, just what else should we talk about? You know, anything.
Bow Wow.
My last one was kind of like, kind of gonna ask about like your dream game that you want to make. I feel like it's a good topic, but
Well, we have one that we could talk about that's both of us have an interest in.
The serial killer game.
Yeah, that has now evolved into the Mansion in the Forest game.
Oh, yeah. I think those
It's-
are two different games.
Oh, okay, that's fine too.
Yeah.
I thought they shared enough, but no, you're right that one is a Resident Evil ASIM and the other one is not.
Yeah.
Which one? We got to talk about both now, otherwise we leave the audience hanging.
The Resident Evil one, I think, sounds sick.
What's hilarious is like it's already almost a game because they made Reverse or whatever or that
Is
one.
that anything like
No,
that?
but it's just that they have. Oh no, there's two. There's Reverse and then there's the Resident Evil 3 one that might actually be called Reverse. I forget which one's which. But one is you play as a bunch of co-op people against somebody like running like the facility, and so you're running around solving puzzles and trying to kill monsters. So like they've already messed with modern RE ASIM multiplayer stuff. It's just the way they did it was really bad. The other way that it exists is Resident Evil Outbreak 1 or File 1 and File 2 are third-person fixed perspective camera angle games that you play co-op or with AI, and there's like various maps and you're trying to, escape. And so they're like little mini Resident Evil games that you have to like work with others on, and people have different abilities, like, oh, this person can lockpick and this person can take more damage and wield heavier weapons. Like, so that already exists, but it's all co-op. There's no asymmetrical multiplayer. It's all PvE.
Yeah, I think the asymmetrical part of it
So
is where
that's
it's really interesting.
Where it gets interesting is like, Resident Evil Outbreak, where it's an old school third person Resident Evil style game with fixed camera angles, but there's also a roaming monster versus what the other ASIM Resident Evil game did, where it's like, oh, I'm controlling the mansion. You're like this overseer that's spawning zombies. No, you just play as the Lisa Trevor or the Mr. X or the Nemesis
Tyrant,
or the
whatever.
Jack Baker or the fucking Illuminados guy. There literally is one of these characters in every Resident Evil game. And so imagine a game where it's, you have like 8 maps that each have their unique guy.
I think it's not.
Or maybe the guys can be in different maps.
I
but
think
you
it's
would-
all one map.
I think you could do multiples though. You could have one that's a village. You could have one that's a mansion.
Well, you could.
Right, but you could. But
It
you're
just,
right.
That's
though.
a lot more ambitious.
You could, yeah. I think. Well, Trav asked Dream, so I was
think
thinking
to me, I'm like, I would
you
rather
could scale it back. Down
I would
to
rather have
just
it be like one, and then there's variations of it that are different every time.
And
you're
the
playing
best
it.
would just be the most simple way of approaching this game would be it's multiplayer RE2 where one character is Mr. X. Like that's it. It's the RPD. You're trying to get out. The RPD might have an underground area that leads into a whatever that's one of the exits. But like the main guy that is the guy that you face off against is a Mr. X. And as you go, just like Jason in Friday the 13th, it's like, hey, you start basic and you gain more powers, just like he does in RE2, where he starts out, oh, I'm the guy in the hat, whatever. But then his arm gets all mutated. And like by the end, he's like a full-blown tyrant monster, way faster, way more dangerous. But you start out as just like the hulking man guy, you know. I think that would be the V1 like minimum to make. I think exploring fixed camera angle though sounds awesome.
I think
me.
fixed camera angle. It's. Oh man, I talked about this when I was talking about Resident Evil 1. How the way that the game uses fixed camera angles. Because sometimes, and it's most of the time they use it the right way,
right?
Where it's perfect. It's it's the different like. They ease you into the concept of fixed camera angles where like really early on they're giving you stuff like mirrors and really obvious shadows and stuff like that to be like
clearly there's a guy behind that corner.
I can see him.
Yeah.
Like I can't necessarily see him, but I see his reflection.
And I can see that there's a guy
shadow.
corner,
I know there's
so
a guy right there. Then they evolve it to like you can't see the guy,
like
but
you're coming
can
toward the camera, or you maybe can hear
and
it.
So like, you know, they're playing with, they evolve the concept of the fixed camera angles, and I don't think the game ever really cheats you because of that with the way that fixed camera angles work.
Never.
Because of the way that the audio works. It's like, yeah, the fixed
There's
camera
never
angles,
any full-blown gotchas where you come around a corner and there was just a guy there. But there are corners where they set you up to look at it and go, maybe there's a guy around that corner. Like that's about as vague as they'll be.
Well, and if you sit there, you'll
can
hear him
it.
breathing, and you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah. So if you
There's
play
obviously a
right,
guy
like,
there.
oh yeah.
Yeah. They give you the
They'll
information
try to catch
that
you
need.
by not paying attention.
Right.
If you're not paying attention, yeah, you can get fucked.
Yeah, and I wonder, you know, okay, I guess in a multiplayer game, you just do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You make it so like, yeah, it's if Mr. T wants to hang behind a corner where he knows line of sight is messed up and like he's not casting a shadow, you don't necessarily have to set up a mirror around every corner. You just have different elements of the design, like the soundscape, so that like, hey, you know that he's right around that corner. If you're listening, if you're paying attention, there's tells.
Right.
He can't just hide, and it's like an impenetrable, like, oh my God, he was just around the corner where I needed to go. I think fixed camera angles not only work in it, but they're almost essential for the counterplay opportunity.
There are people that genuinely feel that way about fixed camera angles in Resident Evil games in general, that like, no, it's essential to what makes those games tick, and removing that is a very different game.
I think of the Resident Evil games that I've played, Resident Evil 2 Remake is the most boring.
I mean, and it's the most mainstream, in my opinion, in a lot of gameplay factors. I think third person over the shoulder, the way in which it presents its narrative, it's very, I think that's a very safe game. And so like,
I don't want it to be like that. And I think, okay, you do fixed camera angles, you're immediately in a different space.
You could do fixed camera angles for the survivors, and you could do like first person for the monster if you wanted to be weird with it.
I think fixed camera angles for both.
Yeah,
works.
I think so too. But that way, it's like, hey, if you want to like get, you know, it's with like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's easier to play the game as the killer first, right? Because it's less pressure. And so I wonder if it would make sense. Oh, hey, you're getting into the game. You're not like a Resident Evil fixed camera angle person. So yeah, when you start out, you're playing first person as the killer. And it's like the more approachable side to the game. It's easier. Yeah, you're just getting kills, having fun. And then for the people that are into like, oh, the survival horror stuff, like, yeah, you play as the people, and like you're way weaker, and you're playing with fixed camera angles. Like, so my point is not that like, oh, you should do it this way, but
No,
you
yeah,
could make that work.
Yeah, there's
There's
some
argument.
interest
Yeah,
there in
yeah.
like, oh yeah, that's
Got an
for
entry
sure
point, yeah.
workable.
Yeah.
And it dichotomizes.
Yeah,
the
like, oh, one is you're the
experiences
guy,
more.
and because it would be two different. Because that is one thing about Resident Evil games, that at least the early ones and the fixed camera ones is like they're meant to be like atmospheric, kind of spooky, puzzle solving experiences, versus like RE4, RE8. Like those are action games at the end of the day with some puzzles. And so if you wanted to create that real tension, I think the fixed camera angles and like assumption that like you like these style of games like works for like, hey, you're playing as the survivor characters, like it's harder, it's spooky, it's
Because I mean, if you do fix camera angles for both, it really becomes important. Then like you can't offer alternative control schemes.
Right.
Tank controls and standard controls
Yeah.
are all of a sudden a problem because of the
Yeah.
differences in how they control and
Yeah.
mobility.
But you could if it's if you have the monster in first person is what you're saying.
If they control differently entirely,
Yeah.
then it doesn't really matter.
It also makes it easier to design, I think, like abilities and stuff. Like, I don't know, or maybe not. It might not make it easier. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just imagining like, yeah, like the Jason like moving around where he moves really fast. Like, oh, if you're doing that in first person, you're kind of like, and you're like going around. You can go.
You can do that in third
whatever.
person though, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter.
The only other issues with it would be that like you mentioned about Texas Chainsaw. Part of the reason why the killer is easier is because you can play as the killer. Like you said, you don't know where to go. That matters less. I mean, it doesn't really, but
Right,
you don't get that punishment
Yeah,
of like
there's
I died
less
and now I don't
punishment,
get
yeah.
to play. You get to spend the full time in the game and explore the map.
experimenting, and yeah,
But
worst thing is
if the
gonna happen. is you don't
perspective
get
is
kills.
different between the two, then that time that you spend as the killer is less valuable because you see things from a different point of view.
Which
So-
is helpful, yeah, because
Or it's not
No,
helpful because
it's
then you
helpful for
switch
the
to,
game mechanics because then you switch to the
and you're
survivors.
like, what?
You're like, wait, what? And it's like, yeah, dude, like we don't want to. We want to keep that experience fresh and scary, So it's like, oh yeah, like you might think like you're used to it, but you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, I wonder if it could work.
But yeah, I think that game idea is so solid. I think if I was gonna,
Yeah, so
Oh,
I
I
mean, the
can just
core of the
make one
idea
game.
is it's a Resident Evil game, co-op, or just multiplayer in general.
Yeah.
4v1 or something,
yeah,
whatever.
4v1, 3v1, 8v1,
Somebody
something.
is one of. I mean, you couldn't do the straight Resident Evil IP. I guess it's the dream game.
You could, yeah. I mean, in theory,
but I think it would work better without it. That,
right,
like,
yeah, just make your own characters
Yeah.
and really play into. I also really like the idea of playing into Cabin in the Woods, where it's like, hey, we're actively using the fact that we're playing with tropes to the narrative of the game and having it be like a similar premise where the idea is like, hey, this is like a testing facility for this company that, this corporation that like makes monsters to test their viability in war and civilian populations or whatever, which is like literally the concept behind Resident Evil, but you're also doing it in a campy way like Cabin in the Woods, where it's setting up like, hey, yeah, you're playing as these characters that are coming in and you're doing these tests, and you're not just like some teenager. It's like, no, you're like a special agent that's like supposed to come here and
And that's
test
why
these
they're telling you to
facilities.
go around. And so it would be structured like Resident Evil, where it's like, yeah, collect the things,
Collect the things, you're looking
solve
for
the
intel,
puzzles. Yeah, you're trying to figure out what's going
Yes.
on.
And like, and it should also be like Phasmo in the sense where like you're kind of like you can exit early, right? Like, hey, I got the information that I think I can get, or I fully completed the mission, but even after that, like I still have to escape and I could die after I've already like got the intel I wanted because I didn't lock in, get in the van, whatever, and so it should be like, hey, like you're earning currency, and like it would take multiple attempts to like, hey, I'm solving these like 10 mysteries of the mansion. One is who created it. The other one is who, why are the monsters here? Like there's all these different pieces, and it's like, oh, like your game.
How does that work in multiplayer?
Oh, the same way as like all sorts of extraction games do. It's like, hey, I'm leveling up by how much I'm doing, and if you can help me, then we can both achieve these goals. But if you die, like I'm still gonna try, but it's harder solo
so
or
you-
whatever. And the idea would that be like unlocking intel, maybe even like opens new paths and stuff. I don't know, like you just do all sorts of shit. So that way it's like, oh, my goal isn't always the same in the mansion.
No, I think it should be different, but I don't necessarily think it should be like intel. I think it should be like
Some can be intel, some can be items, some can be
I think
bosses
they should
killed
almost always
or
be
something.
like items, and it should be like you have to go get the sample of the T virus. Like you're starting, you have to go deep in the mansion. You have to, and you also have to get out. But you're there.
You could also do like assassinate Wesker kind of thing, or I mean, obviously, if we wouldn't be using Resident Evil, but assassinate like some key person. Like that's one in RE2. William Birkin is one of the monsters, and you're sent there to kill him. But you don't know or you're not. But there's a team that's sent there. But like maybe, you're there to assassinate the scientist, or so there's all these different like scenarios. But what I think would be cool is if they were all always available and they're all hard to do, where it's like, hey, dude, like you need a lot to go right and you need to do a lot of planning to complete one of the scenarios. And so that way, every player, when they're loading in, they're all trying to complete these different scenarios. Some of them are working together to do one, while one guy's off doing another one. And so that gives the monster character, like, hey,
It would be so cool if the game was like the size of Resident Evil 1.
Yeah, it's like, no, dude, huge facilities. A game takes an hour. Like if you're really trying to get to the end.
I don't know about an hour. That's
30 minutes, whatever.
way too long for a
Just thinking like League
multiplayer.
Okay, they just have to be a little longer. So
I think like 30 minutes is.
I'm imagining like
target
Call
time.
of Duty Zombies, where it's like, hey, me and my buddies were getting together and we're gonna try to do the secret thing.
Yeah, but you're playing against somebody too. It's not just me and my buddies. You're at the mercy. What if that person disconnects?
Who?
The
monster?
monster, yeah. The lobby's over. You were 45 minutes in and they disconnected. Jesus Christ.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you would have to have some way of like the only answer if you're gonna try to make games longer is like, hey, if that happens, like you connect somebody new or you put in.
I
like
think
a
a target time of an
bot.
hour is way too long. You should be looking at more 15 to 25 minutes as like that's a typical game length.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, and then it should be. But my thought is that like the first times you're loading in, like you're gonna have such a hard time completing those tasks. Like, hey, they might only take 15 minutes, but the first time you do it, you're gonna spend 15 minutes just trying to figure out like what the first thing there is to do. If that's how long matches are gonna be. Like for example, I think it's way too easy to escape in Texas Chainsaw, right? I think that escaping should be like, hey, like you have an easy out. So maybe your first time you figure out a couple things and then you bail, or you figured out a couple things and then you died. But it's permanent knowledge that you now have toward one of X quest lines. So maybe the next time you spawn in, you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to try to do that quest line again, but you spawn somewhere on the other side of the map. So it's like, oh, I'm not going to do but you have no idea. So you're exploring around. You're like, oh, wait, this connects over here. And that's how you would oh, okay. But you've already found some new kind of quest, like starting point, and that's why I think like it could be cool if it started with almost like text logs, like Resident Evil. So at the beginning, the first thing you're doing is like you load into a bedroom or an office or whatever. You load on one part of the map. You're looking around. And you're like, oh, there's like a piece of paper here that's like explains. And it's like, oh, the key behind the bookshelf on the whatever. And you're like, oh, okay. So, and like you don't necessarily know which quest you're doing, essentially, if you think about it like that. And maybe at first like there is no UI for it. You have to unlock it or something, or maybe it's all there. And maybe it highlights, oh, you just started this quest. Like, I don't know, or maybe it's super subtle. But then it's like, oh, after you have read that thing before, you could even have it be like, oh, I don't need to read that anymore when I'm doing that quest. I can skip that piece.
No.
But maybe,
I
no.
Yeah, it should be random.
It should be some level of random where, oh yeah, there's a note here that says to do a thing, but it's like, oh, it might say, look behind the bookshelf. It might say, find the key under the dining table. It might say whatever. And it's like, oh, it's a X number of things that like, oh yeah, that's the start of this quest is I have to find the key that opens the door to the basement. Because in the basement, there's a thing.
It should be like,
but
you have to get
where you find that key.
You have to get in the
change.
basement. Is it a key? Is it a code combination? Like, what is the basement locked with?
Right.
And it's like, yeah, figure that out. And so that doesn't even necessarily mean like
you don't necessarily need to read anything, but it would help you in an earlier playthrough. Oh, what's going on? Later playthroughs, it's like, okay, the first thing I do is I go look at the basement door. I see what it is.
Look at the basement door and
but
see
the
what
first
it
time you're
is.
playing, you're not going to do that. You're going to
Right.
be, oh, what's this document? What's this? And you're reading, walking around, and like you're going to make less progress because you're still.
So that's
But then you're going to spawn on the other side of the map.
I think there are a couple things
like,
in
oh,
the
there's different
procedural
stuff.
generation that would have to happen to make it.
And like other
so that
people
it's
could
not
open the
terrible.
door for you, and you're like, oh my god, they already opened the fucking door.
Well, and that's what you should
Yeah.
do is you should have the paths
Kind of
overlapping in
intersecting,
different
yes.
ways where it's
Yes.
like, oh yeah, this path needs to
God.
open this one, but they didn't have to get in here. They came in to where you needed to go through this
Right,
other way. And because you saw this door was unlocked and they're like, oh
Yes.
shit, they must have came in through this way.
Yes.
Now you have alternate
But then
paths
you're like, oh,
unlocked.
but the guy could be down here, and that
'Cause they
means he's in
came through
phase
this
2.
way.
And
Yeah, yep.
Dude, yeah, it could be so sick.
Yeah, it's a cool game idea.
I think, and what I think though is that, and as much as I want it to be fixed camera angle, I think you could do it not. I think that the core game, aside from the camera angles, is actually strong enough that like you could actually do this in first, third, or fixed. Like, and I think that the game really works. I think the core is so strong. It's such a strong foundation for that ASIM like genre that like you can play with a lot of the details, fudge things up. You could even make mistakes, and like it's still gonna be awesome.
I think you do a couple things too, like you make like defensive items really OP, and so you strongly incentivize people to spend their time like poking around rooms
Yeah.
and opening drawers and stuff.
like, yeah, dude, resources are rare. When you find stuff, like it's fucking, and it all works so well in like a typical like for the typical Resident Evil survival horror game enjoyer, where it's like, no, it's a survival horror game. It just so happens that you're working against like a
person.
person.
Yeah.
And their goal is to like literally kill everyone, like that, and that's it. It's like, oh yeah, dude, you're just like all the characters are sent in. It's like, yeah, dude, the monsters are sent in and like have like a goal. And maybe sometimes it could be like, oh no, like you can destroy evidence and stuff, and they'll like end quest lines, or you could just you just kill everyone. Like, I don't,
It would be so sick.
like, oh, you can destroy certain doors that cut off.
Like I'm
certain
imagining
quests.
you had like Jack Baker style-esque, where it's like essentially a guy
Uh-huh.
as the bad guy, and it's like, what if you could like leave fake clues? That's like, yeah, dude, you can make like a fake clue. It brings up like a menu that's like a Mad Lib of like a Resident Evil template thing,
Mhm.
and it's giving you like, oh yeah, this is like, it's automatically generated, so it's going to be on the path that like one of the players is on. And it's going to say,
Yeah.
like, you pick the things. Like, you say, oh, yeah, pick the key in this place, whatever. And you fucking fill it out with, like, a Mad Lib style thing. And so you can now, like, oh, if
a
somebody
fake
finds
clue.
that, it's a fake clue. They're going to go there and go look for that. And you fucking send them off on the wrong path.
That sounds so crazy to be able to like.
But also, if somebody found the real one, they would know.
There would have to be a way for people to tell the difference between the reals and the fakes somehow or something.
Why?
I just don't really understand the mechanic. Like, what's the fun?
What do you mean? That's fun.
No, like for like the other people. Like, how does it work as like oh, that's a cool aspect of the game that really adds to my experience.
What do you mean? What are all the mechanics for the villains? They need stuff to do besides walk around and punch people.
Do they?
Yeah,
Why?
because that's boring.
That's like
I
that's
slowly stomp and just
Well,
like
slowly.
hope I walk into somebody and
No, it's-
punch them.
you're literally describing Friday the 13th. So I'm saying it's like it doesn't have to be like no, it's different gameplay modes. One is you hunt people down and you kill them, and yeah, maybe you can set traps.
Playing as Jason sucks in Friday the 13th.
Maybe you can set traps. Maybe there's like upgrade items you can find that make it so like hey, so maybe my first goal is I want similar to Grandpa in Texas Chainsaw, but instead of Grandpa, it's like no, I'm upgrading myself. Like yes, I'll upgrade slowly over time, but if I drink blood or whatever, or if I go find the vial, then like I can inject myself and enter my next phase early, or so maybe there's some stuff like that. So there's a little bit of decision making.
What if you have like
My main thing is just like the Mad Lib thing. I'm like
yeah, no, it's sick. And
Okay.
what if you have like what if you have fake puzzle pieces where it's like okay, let's say you need like the ruby, the sapphire, and the emerald or something to slot in a thing, and it's like, okay, somebody like a villain could leave behind like a fake like ruby,
I hate this.
and you have to fucking examine it in your inventory,
Right.
and be like, okay, you picked up the ruby. If you don't spend the time to go examine it, it might be a fake one.
Right. Somebody. Yes. That's what I'm saying. It's like, oh, okay. Like, yes, there has to be some way for it to be a game for the other player. Is all. So if it's just like I read a document and there's no way I could have known if this was real or fake, then
Well, the way you would know if it's real or fake is by information that you already have or don't, right? If it says, hey, go find the key to open the basement door, and you already looked at the basement door and it's a fucking padlock, you're like, that's a bullshit note.
yeah, but
You can get that information,
but
and you should
what
have
if
it.
but what if they made one that was like, oh yeah, like the
You just limit the mechanics so
padlock-
you can't make it like a super legit fake.
Yeah, I would like it if it was like
It should be based
very
on...
tied, like yeah, to like oh, I can literally say I would just need a really good example. Like give me one really good example.
I
of
just
a
gave you one.
No, a good one.
That was a good one.
The key. No, explain it. The key is where.
I left a note somewhere, and it says, go get the key in the fucking foyer to go unlock the basement door. The basement door doesn't take a key. It's a fucking number combination.
So there is no key,
There is no key. So that's how you know it's a bullshit.
but there is
No.
a foyer.
Yeah. But if you're like, oh, I need to open the basement door, and you think that, why would you think there's a key for it if there's a number pad combination? So you should be able to identify that's a fake note. That's trying to lead me somewhere. But if you aren't paying attention, you're going to say, oh shit, the key for the basement's in there. Let me go get that. And you're going to follow it like an
Oh, and
idiot.
some guy's gonna just be waiting in the foyer.
Yeah.
It's okay. I think I just don't like the mad libbing aspect of it, where it's like, oh, they're creating a thing.
It
I
would
wonder
be quick.
if the
It's a couple
mechanic.
keywords.
Yeah, I wonder if the mechanic would be more so like, you find like a clue that already exists. That's like a it's like, oh yeah, like the padlock for the door is 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever. The padlock for the door for the basement. No. The padlock for the door to the basement is hidden in the book in the library or whatever. So it's like, oh, okay, like so the library is a place, so that's one piece of information, and that maybe the library can be locked sometimes. So it's like, oh well, if the library's locked, then that can't be true. So that aspect of it. Then there's also
No, that relies on way too much.
no. I'm just saying,
like,
it could be like a bunch of things where it's like, oh, it could be a door to the basement, or it could be a padlock, or it could be a battery generator door, or
well, yeah, it
an
could be
elevator.
a bunch of different stuff.
And it could be that, what item you find it in, and the place that you can find that thing in. And so it's like, hey, there's these 3 things, and you walk up to it and you can fudge one of them or something, where it's like, oh yeah, like the key code
But
to
then
the
it's
basement
like, how do you get into the
is
basement
in
then
the-
if you change?
is blank in the library or whatever. And so like, if you've already been to the foyer, you would know, like as the other player, you would know, well, I know that the foyer is an option. Like I'm not locked out of the foyer. I can't find the book that he's talking about, but I did see that there is a padlock. So I know that like it was just this one aspect that wasn't right or whatever. I don't know. I'm just trying to like flesh it out. Because yeah, I like the idea of like
I don't like
fudging it.
altering existing notes. I like leaving a completely.
it should be a separate one.
I like leaving a completely conflicting note, and so
I just think
one,
it
you
needs to
could
be like,
have-
oh, it has to be like, hey, they have to pick 2 truths and a false is when they make it, basically.
No, I think it could be totally bullshit, and you have something to compare it to, and also the information that exists in the environment to deduce which one is completely falsified and which one's the legit
The only
one.
actually the main thing I don't like about this mechanic is that I don't feel a good enough reference to, this is stupid, but actually it's not, but there's not a good enough reference point to anything in the Resident Evil series, because none of it really operates like this. It's like, yes, there are notes, but they don't really work that way. There's
the
never
killers don't do anything in those games
yeah,
besides walk around and punch
but there's
you.
but that's why it's like, hey, like all of the analogs we've been saying so far have been analogs where it's like, oh, and just like in Resident Evil, you just do that, and that's why it's really easy to have those like, oh yeah, I can immediately picture how that's working. I think that's the only thing that's not working. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm saying the reason it's not hitting is because like, oh, there's not that good enough comparison, so it just takes more imagination, because it's a very unique mechanic is what you're describing. It's very simple, okay, mad libbing, but it's like, oh, like how does that feel in gameplay? How does it work for the monster versus how it works for the players? And what are all like the parameters? It's like, oh, you actually need to like think through a lot of that versus a lot of the other things. It's like,
I don't think it's a lot.
I don't even need to think through all of the options, because it's like, oh yeah, you're playing as a Mr. X, and immediately you're like, oh, or you could be Lisa Trevor, or you could be the Tyrant, or you could be Jack Baker, or like immediately picture painted, like, oh, I can be all these, and they have slightly different abilities. Maybe he can bust through walls. Maybe he whatever, like you immediately there's all these things.
What does Jack Baker do?
Huh? He can bust through walls. That's
what does Nemesis do?
He has a missile launcher.
Can he bust through walls?
Maybe not. Like they just have like Mr. X can bust through walls. Lisa Trevor can't. Tyrant can't. Jack Baker can. Fucking what's his name? The guy from RE4 can't. Like, it's not like everyone would have completely unique abilities. It would be like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where there's overlap. We're like, oh, these two can trap. This guy can do lockpicks, but like, oh, like they would have unique things, right? They would have overlaps.
There's no overlapping abilities in Chainsaw.
Yeah, like two people can trap.
But they're different traps.
And well, yeah. So they would be different. Like, oh yeah, Nemesis can bust through walls, but what you do is you pull out your missile launcher and you go, and obviously you're not literally Nemesis. So it's like, because again, it's not going to necessarily be like an RE clone, but it's like, hey, you could play with these different things. Like,
yeah, I think that's just super boring. Like, you should be trying to play with the progression of, like, the best killer in Texas Chainsaw, and not even like, I mean, he is the best one, but also the most fun one to play is Cook, because Cook alters the progression of the survivors. He's the only one who does that.
Right.
He's the only one who forces people
and I think
to adjust lanes of progression.
So that's why I wonder, maybe there's a character that you can play that like, oh, they can fudge notes.
Right.
Or like,
that's what I said.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Imagine you're playing as like a guy, and like that's
character.
the thing that he can
And then
do.
you have another character that's a fucking brute. That's just like, bro,
the character should have different ways to do
100%,
things.
Yeah, we're on the same page. Yeah, totally. But there isn't a character that does like what you're describing in Resident Evil. So I'm like, oh, all I'm saying is that there's not a direct analog. You have to really.
Well, yeah, because the Resident Evil games are non-reactive.
Yes,
If they were super cool and reactive, there would for sure be stuff like that.
Well, there's not really in Texas Chainsaw. It's as simple as I can padlock.
Because there's not note reading and puzzle solving as a core progression element of Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, but I don't think that like having that be an aspect. I don't think that that doesn't work. Like having that dichotomy, right? Like to have your killer be I go kill and I break stuff, and then having your survivors be like, no, I have to read notes and solve puzzles. I think that having that like that dichotomy be as strong as possible isn't a bad thing or a good thing inherently. It's just going to come down to execution. So that's why I'm like, oh, you're like, oh, it sucks. Like, what are you going to do? Walk around and punch people? I'm like, I don't think that doesn't work. And it's like, oh, well, what if there's like puzzly essentially?
I think that doesn't work.
I think it does.
I think it doesn't. I
think it's shown to have worked.
I don't agree with you.
Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw have both been popular.
Friday
and Dead by Daylight
failed miserably.
They've both been extremely nichely popular.
Texas Chainsaw has also died really fast. Also, Leatherface is the least popular character, and that is his mechanic, because that's boring.
Who is?
Leatherface.
Oh, yeah.
He's by far the least popular character, and that's his mechanic. He's the brute that
He's the
really
brute,
all he does is run around and punch people. That's fucking boring.
That's all Jason did.
The reason why people don't want to play as him.
I agree that those games have problems, but I don't think that those. I
just don't. I agree
core
with you.
problems.
It's an execution problem.
Yes,
But you shouldn't be walking into it with the mindset of like, yeah, that's what our killers are going to do. They're going to walk around and punch people, and that's it. Ultimately, you have
It
to.
depends on if you're
kill
doing
people somehow.
It depends on if you're doing full on dream game, nothing's out of the question, and like hey, like a V1.
The question was
like-
dream game.
Right, but we talked about both versions where hey, there's a version that's like, dude, if we really want, like, it would just be the one map with the one bad guy, and you're trying to get out. Like that's if you had to MVP it. But yeah, dream game, Resident Evil IP is not even off the table. You could just
I think it works better without the Resident Evil IP because that is inherently limiting. That you want, you don't want the IP. I also think it's better with one map than multiple maps. One giant map that is procedurally changing every time you play it. There's different things. Certain doors are locked. Different.
I like
different
multiple
ways.
maps that are all doing that. So it's like
I like one
because I think that there's some really fun variants that you can pull. Just based on Resident Evil IP, and again, like it's not gonna be, but like using those as templates, it's like, hey, like the mansion with the laboratory connected to the aquarium, like versus like the Resident Evil 4 village connected to the castle, connected to the island, you can have a map that maybe incorporates all of that, and it's like a Fortnite size map.
You make it one humongous map, and you fucking
and sometimes zones aren't connected. Like, that zone you're not going to the factory in this one because, like, like the way it generated. Like, there's no path to
you
the factory.
can always get everywhere.
Oh, okay,
but the different
paths
paths are different, and it to some point where it's like it's not feasible, and like why would you ever do that? The risk of going in these transition zones.
I also think that the bigger you make the map, the more worth it would be to increase the number of killers. Because like, hey, if you're just working with the mansion, just the size of the RE1 game mansion alone, like a lot of space to cover, a lot of different rooms, lots of hiding spots, and like, and that's, I'm not even including like, hey, the underground and into it's like, if you start getting into like, the whole, Umbrella research facility is under there too. Like,
well, it's where
huge.
the level design starts to get really important,
right? And you need to have
backtracking.
You need to have multiple paths around, and like there can't be really like easy ways to just like a guy stands there, and there have to be really good other exits and whatever. But if you have like multiple killers, and it's like, hey, dude, like there's like 3 people over here kind of working together. There's 4 people over here. There's a solo guy over here. It's a group of 8 against 3 killers or something like that. Like, that could work. Like something like that. And each killer is like, hey, one guy's a Mr. X.
If you're on the size of the Resident Evil 1 map and you have 3 killers, it's too many.
No, yeah, you're right. That's what I'm saying. The bigger the map gets,
okay.
Like if
that's already a really big map.
If you wanted, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You could go really big. You could go really big and just add more players on both sides. Because I think you could do, like 4 players and a killer, and
I mean, the
and like
solution
RE1
then
map.
I think would actually be that you start with the Resident Evil 1 mansion. You're like, okay, I want the Resident Evil 4 village roughly the same size as the mansion in terms of scope.
Yeah.
You lock the killers. They don't leave their
base
of operations.
Yeah, like, you have the Los Illuminados guy over here, and you have the whatever guy over here.
That way you don't end up at a point where it's like they're all grouped in one space.
Or you do it at a certain point in the match where it's like the killers can now leave their zones, and you're like, because you let the match go on too long. Like you could add that as a mechanic.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, dude, it turns into a fuck show if you fuck.
Like, so I'm thinking like, okay, if you let them transition, like you're in the Resident Evil 1 map,
mm-hmm.
you can allow camping to a certain extent because like there's a lot of ways to get around in RE1, but like at the start there's a lot of looping back in that entryway, but there's 2 floors to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so and there's plenty of ways to get between floor 1 and floor 2 on both wings. You can go up and down, and so you can either enter on the top or the bottom. So if the killer's camping the bottom and you come in on top, he sees you and he might come up to chase you. But that's not. It takes a little while to get up there. You're gonna run across before he gets up there, and you're gone. You can go hide in one of the various fucking rooms that you can go get into.
It's just crazy because it's so easy to visualize because the framework is there. It's like, oh, just imagine Resident Evil. Imagine the big guy. Imagine the way you're running around and the things you would do in a Resident Evil game. And then just like kind of start imagining like these multiplayer aspects. And it's like, it paints such a clear picture.
You got things like the zombies where it's like, you leave zombie bodies so that the killer knows that people have been here because they fucking killed the zombies.
And it's like, it's the exact same as like in RE games. You have that choice. Like, do I want to fucking run past dudes or do I want? Yeah, man. Now there's another layer to it. Yeah, it's awesome. It's really good. Yeah, you can kill that guy so you can backtrack easier, but now he knows you're over there. Maybe if he comes over here and he sees the dead body,
he knows somebody went through here at some point.
They might have killed him and ran a different way. So good.
It's a great game
actually
idea.
Such a great concept. Someday, once video games are generated by AI and we can just be like, and we can just like upload this conversation to it and it's like,
make that.
Yeah, I got you. And it's just fucking spits it out. I can't wait till it has like a name too. And we're like, hey, Jason, fucking make me a game. And it's like, yes, sir. What sort of game would you like? I'm like, why do you say it like that? He's like, don't know.
Why'd you say it like that?
I just think it would be cool if that's how they operated.
Okay.
You know, just a little bit more human, you know. We're not perfect. But the games that they would make would be perfect.
Well, there are ideas, so they're not necessarily perfect.
Yeah, and if they're not, they're going in the trash, not the ideas.
In the dumper.
Well, the dumper, like my ass?
Yeah, stick them up your ass.
I put my robot in my ass when it misbehaves. That's a crazy...
I'm a real boy.
That's a crazy... You don't have your AirPod in. Wait, are you in the call?
No, I'm out of it.
You did the real boy one.
Oh.
All
right, that's the pod.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
See ya, next time.
Any final words on like Israel and Hamas?
Good luck next time.
I'm working on it.